live.
Thank you. We'd like to welcome everyone to this October 25th meeting of the Commission on Ethics and Lobbying Government in the state of New York. Some of us are here in New York City, others are in Albany, and we welcome anyone who is tuning in online. I'm going to ask our Executive Director, Mr. Sam Berlin, if he will let us know if there's a quorum and provide us any other information we need in order to get this meeting underway.
Sir Davey, thank you. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in accordance with the provisions of the Open Meetings Law, as well as the requirements of Section 94 of the Executive Law. The meeting room we're using at the New York State Conference Center at 25 Beaver Street in Manhattan, as well as our conference room at the Commission's offices in Albany at 440 Broadway, are open to the public during public session. The meeting is also being live streamed. The link can be found on our website at www.ethics.ny.gov. Chair Davey, we do have a quorum of commissioners present here at the conference center in Manhattan.
Thank you. We have two sets of minutes to approve. We have the September 13th special committee meeting minutes, and then the September 27th regular committee meeting minutes. So we'll take the September 13th special committee meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Commissioner James, is there a second? Commissioner Cardozo, are there any corrections, additions, subtractions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the meeting of September 13th, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, ayes have it. Motion is carried. Now for the September 27th meeting minutes. Motion to approve. Vice Chair Austin, is there a second? Commissioner James, I have at least one, and I might have another one. I don't want to deprive my colleague, Commissioner Austin, who's much more erudite and learned than I am, of being memorialized for having called to our attention a word that may not be a word. In the minutes on page 2 in our books, it says that Chair Davey noted that on page 12, in the third sentence in the large paragraph before the final heading, the word scarily may not be the correct word. I don't think that was me. I think that was Vice Chair Austin. So that correction.
Move as amended.
And are there any others?
Yeah.
Yes.
On page 7, bottom of page 7, there's a reference to the reimbursement issue, an explanation that we will be getting the breakdown at the next meeting. And and then there was a follow-up memo to that effect that we'll be getting last week or so. I just wonder when we'll be getting.
We're going to be getting that out for conclusion of the meeting.
Okay. Then I had one other, if I may, on the page. It's nothing good.
I had one, additional one. Let's see if I can find it quickly.
On page 7, I had requested that there be a breakdown of the savings that we would realize. The open meetings law were amended so that our committee meetings were virtual rather than we have to come to Albany or New York to have those meetings. That was also a promise for today's meeting.
We have that. I'm going to distribute a spreadsheet following the meeting.
Thank you.
Today.
I'm going to note it, and then I'll find the actual reference later. I thought I marked it, but I didn't. On the establishment of the working group on the budget, the minutes say that the chair appointed the working group, and then it listed the members. What it did not, what the minutes did not reflect was that Commissioner Edwards made note of the fact that the original grouping did not include any female representation. And so that was amended so that she would be a part of that working group. And I think that should be reflected on the minutes, particularly since it was a highly impressive reference. Right, exactly. And she was right. And she was right, absolutely. Commissioner.
Yeah. So on 12 to 13, where it talks about the comprehensive review of rules and regulations. We could add, staff agreed to circulate either a marked up version of your circulated memo or a proposed. That's we're for everybody else's information. We're still planning to hold a meeting on that, but I think we can be sure to put next steps in the minutes where they're committed to.
Yes, and I should say that staff is working on that memo, and we expect to have the draft of it at something next week.
Are there any other revisions or additions, comments on the minutes?
So there are a couple of typographical errors on page 14. The first full, very short paragraph, motion, could read motion carried as opposed to carries. It's two. And on page 15, just above the headed paragraph, last line should read, Executive Director Berlin stated that such a provision will be added. Strike the it as necessary.
All right, anything else? Are we ready to, all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended and revised, please say aye. Any opposed? And Commissioner Groenewegen is abstaining, and I think because you weren't at that meeting. So were you? Minutes are approved as amended, and welcome back. Operations update?
Thank you. The operations update can be found under tab B. Let me note that as we have been doing since the beginning of this year, and in comparison to staff activity in each category the prior year to date, and for the corresponding monthly period in 2022, we also have a column, which is the first column in the chart, running all the way through it, showing activity for the preceding months. I can say that activity has continued to increase overall this year. You see that notably the number of complaints and referrals we've received now exceeds the number of the corresponding period in 2022. And in other areas, the figures reflect both normal cyclical patterns as well as new patterns. For example, lobbying, we're now well past the earliest phases of the current 2023-24 annual cycle, which began in January, as well as the inception of the new training program for lobbyist clients. Which ethics training for lobbyists, of course, is still included, which has produced a greater number of lobbying-related inquiries. You can see that those are declining somewhat dramatically month to month as more and more the lobbyists and clients continue to train. And I should add, and so that a little bit more, subsequently, we're very near to completing our expanded staffing plan. We're not quite there. And that is continuing as we ask staff to have impact across the board in the agency. With respect to ethics training, you can see at page 5, we had it last month, we have it last month's report requirements for training that is being conducted by agency ethics officers and trainers. The numbers continue to look very, very solid. And you'll see that as of the end of September, October actually, for that particular statistics, in the current calendar year, over 92,000 state officers and employees have received live training, either online or in person. And if you add to that figure, more than 25,000 who received training in the prior calendar year after the inception of the agency in July, we're well in excess of 115,000 individuals who have received live, either online or in person, training. And as I said last month,
Excess of how many? I mean,
for that period of time, 115,000.
115,000.
The target ultimately is to be doing 150,000 of those, roughly
Okay.
half the workforce live online or in person.
So did we lose,
We're still on.
yes.
You can hear us? See us?
We can hear you, but you cut out. We've been cutting out a lot, so if anybody was logged into the meeting, if you could just make sure you're muted and your audio is off on your laptops, because you guys are cutting out.
Can you still hear us, Albany? Emily?
Yes, we can hear you, yes.
Okay.
We're back.
Yes.
Any questions on the operations?
Yes. Given the significant and commendable increase in the training, are we yet in a position to evaluate the quality of what everything's coming on? Since obviously the greater burden on us as well as the various agencies, and that we have a timing and a program to evaluate the quality of the training, not just the people who are showing up.
There are two components to that. One, and we're continuing to address content with ethics officers. As you know, through the public hearing process and also just through the normal process of work with ethics officers. Education group does from time to time get requests for modifications and so on to the training materials that we provide. There is a condensed version, somewhat condensed version of the training that is being prepared for non-college, white college members of the workforce. But in terms of content, we are holding the line because the statute requires a comprehensive ethics training course. So that's the first part. Second, in terms of metrics, that's something that the Education Committee has been looking at, and how you evaluate that, whether it's be performance-based, looking at incidents that are reported of departures, or more reports coming in, frankly, from sensitive workforce, asking questions about their conduct, or on the other side, the investigative side, making reports. But all the phases of creating those metrics and looking at, right now we're trying to roll out and get a very large number of agencies and their employees on board. And I have to say, level of cooperation, if that's a consideration in assessing the effectiveness of the program. Level of cooperation has been pretty high. There are some instances in which we have difficulty receiving data back. We'll be working on the annual report, which will itemize by agency with employees out there to receive training. We're not yet at the end of the year deadlines that we've created based on the calendar year. Our objectives are really multi-year objectives.
If I could just add that my concern when I looked at the substance a while ago was it was very easy for a commission, for a member of the agency to check in that he's coming in, but not really sit through the whole course. And I wonder if that issue has been corrected.
I don't think it has been, but for me, they should really be around the degree to which training has impacted incidents. That's what I'm concerned about. That how do you measure the extent to which training has made a difference in our numbers? And so, for example, I'd be interested in knowing, for example, I spent several hours reading all of the complaints that have been registered. Many of them mentioned, and some of them seem to be former training. To what degree have they, people who criticized, been introduced to training? Or somehow, how these numbers, how much training, don't see that reforms. That's important to me versus whether they, there's going to be a way to avoid doing the I've spent a lifetime trying to figure out how to avoid sessions, everything. So I don't think we can avoid that. For those people who have had training, has it changed behavior? And that's what I think was the implication.
And there are technologies that we're looking at. Just on a webinar on the subject, who has participated in that. There are technologies for measuring participation, attentiveness online. So there are electronic means for monitoring that as well with respect to the online courses, and of course in person. One could see our classes are contained within that, whether individuals are paying attention or not.
So test maybe after the exam, extent of procedure.
I mean, these are all things we're looking at. The online CETC that's just been in the earliest phases of being rolled out on SLMS. Some technical things that have at the SLMS and that need to be taken care of to get the agencies plugged into the ability to use that course. Does have the provisions where you have to answer certain questions segment by segment in order to advance. So there are those kinds of safeguards. That's a pure online course built into that. And there are methodologies that the agencies have long used where individuals who are attending live online still have to plug in the codes that are provided in the course of the course. Does that mean they got somebody else watching? I don't go too far overboard. This is ethics training. And individuals should know that it's to their disadvantage, frankly, not to take the course. They ought to know where they could potentially get themselves in trouble. And if they certify they've taken the course, well, for other purposes of being on notice, what the ethics laws require, they're on notice. But we have more to look at in terms of measuring. It's actual participation in a course. There are means technological of measuring that. The actual impact of training. It's like any academic situation. And the fact that folks now have repetition maybe it's old fashioned, but it's kind of a key to drilling things in and making them, part of your mindset. And now there's going to be annual training for everybody. That's a heavy lift for us and for all the agencies. But that constant training and retraining, hopefully will have that impact, should have that impact.
I just want to end by saying that from my perspective, we have to think about how we utilize the resources that we have and what would be the most efficient measure success. I think that it's as opposed to measuring people who don't observe, get training or circumvent it, we find a way to, how we want to change people's attitudes about the importance of ethics training. And so what do we do to inspire them to want to be involved? Not that they need to understand the value. They need to recognize. They need to want to be, we have to find a way to inspire them to want to do the training. And I'd rather, as opposed to penalizing people or finding ways to make sure people do what they do, I'd rather find ways to inspire them to want to be part of this new way of thinking about governance.
Recognizing human nature to be what it is. If inspiring doesn't work, doesn't mean that some other incentives implemented into the system to ensure that people do what they're supposed to do. But point taken. Commissioner Braunwagen.
Well, I agree. Assessing the efficacy of our training is really important. But one thing I think we can't underestimate is that we now have something that I don't know that Jacob had in its final years, which is a really strong communications plan. And we've got an enhanced website and we've put out an annual report. So I mean, there are a lot of additional avenues, or at least enhanced avenues out there for this body to get out the requirements of the law. And I think that I don't know how you factor into the efficacy of the training, but I think the important thing is to be watching to see if the number of requests for guidance go up. We now want to be certain, or if the number of complaints tend to go. But again, they could also go up from people recognizing things. So I mean, it is going to be a challenge, but I think the key is to know that we've got good messaging, that we think the training is sound, and it's relevant, and that the other venues are clear.
All those fields we can do surveys.
Yeah, I was going to ask to that end, how are we assessing how the people who are taking the training, experiencing it?
And have to make a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
I will say, we're working on the technologies we need to implement, to do all of those things. But we're doing all of these things simultaneously. Looking at the building systems. It's not an easy lift and it's not inexpensive to achieve all kinds of things. To Commissioner Groenwagen's point, our Director of Public Affairs and Communications, Emily DeSantis, and her team have devised a very comprehensive social media communications program. We put out a lot of information to anybody who can access it and who's looking at those kinds of things. And eventually we'll have a lot of traction there. That will be another way of getting the information out there. But the immediate focus is to get the entire workforce into compliance with the requirements of the statute. Everybody receive comprehensive ethics training and refresher training literally every year.
And so a special thank you then, just to recognize the good and effective work of our Director of Communications.
And yes.
Emily DeSantis and her team.
Yes.
So thank you.
In our education.
And the education, unless.
Megan Hennigan and Mike Diaz and their team, their trainers, their assistants, and frankly, all the ethics officers in the agencies, the training assistants they have who are conducting all of those courses.
Excellent. Well, thank you all, and let's keep it going. All right.
Any questions on the operations reports?
I have a note for the operations report for page 1 investigations. There seems to have been a mistake because I can tell just looking at these numbers that there's an error. We will get you revised numbers because I know for a fact that we closed matters in 2023 and it currently shows 0. So we will either get you numbers before the end of this meeting or before the next meeting.
Yeah, why don't we correct those and we'll circulate it correctly. Okay.
If I can, that's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, staffing and recruiting?
Staffing and recruiting. As I said, we're well along in the process. Training unit. Have at least one training assistant. They will make recommendations with respect to whether want to add another training associate to trainer for the group. The goal is for us for our group to be conducting more and more trainings that will be available to the entire workforce. But they are recruiting for that assistant. So, in the ethics group, we have an accepted offer now, waiting for the for the vacant position of deputy director. So we're looking forward to that being finalized. The group is moving forward with 2 identified candidates for the 2 ethics attorney positions that are currently to be filled. And we would be outstanding in the FDS route for an analyst. Just waiting for that. Some 2 individuals who ought to be coming on board relatively quickly in investigations and enforcement. We have a new investigator, what Brian talk about. When Brian is back, well, we'll do it when we do the investigations and enforcement.
Right.
But I don't want to steal his thunder,
Sure.
but Wayne and Infantina, that's what he does. We're very happy to have him.
Thank you.
Chair James?
Yeah, I'm sorry, can we go back to the operation for a second?
Sure.
On page 4, notice that most of the delinquency issue is actually down from last year, and I'm just wondering, is it for the people who are complying after they receive the notice, or it's timing issue? So the delinquency is 47, 49, and we're in, failure to file notices was up 47.
I don't, the notices of delinquency are cyclical. So it may simply be a reflection of where they are in the process of conducting the reviews. Because they do draws and then they work through it. So it's going to vary from month to month and period to period, but over the year, there should be a more or less steady level. Once we have everybody in place, we're also bringing in new software. So a number of things going on in the group, but it's really a longer period number that we keep our eye on to make sure that we're hitting the numbers we want to hit.
Go back to staffing and recruiting now that Brian's back. Brian, you want to introduce Elena?
Please welcome Elena Infantina. She's a new investigator in our group. She comes from the New York City Department of Investigation, where she has a very good track record in investigations and working with various district attorney's offices on environmental crimes, municipal crimes, a lot of things in the city. She's been there and can handle it. She's a welcome addition to our group. Happy to have her. Already has been diving into matters that we will discuss later possibly or at another time. So please welcome Wynn.
Elena, welcome.
Thank you.
This is where I said she has to sing her school fight song, but
I didn't even know if I had. No, I am looking forward to working with everyone. Ethics violations and corruption investigations is what I've been doing for the last 10 or so years. So I'm glad to kind of do it at the state level, and I hope we can make a difference. So.
Right. Thank you. Welcome. Here.
Let me add that Brian's also in the process of filling the remaining investigative counsel position, and that has interviews underway. And then in the administrative group, unfortunately, Mariana is unable to join us today. We have a new admin starting tomorrow. So we'll wait till the next meeting to introduce her. And all the welcome addition. Preparing for meetings and handling general administrative work for the agency. And we will shortly be posting for another. relatively senior position. Much cover, those are the outstanding positions that we're looking at to fill. And we have one individual, I think we've mentioned previously, who is retiring from the investigation and enforcement group. Pete Smith, who has been with us for a number of years. There he is. Been holding down the western end of the operation for quite a few years now. He has been our chief investigator and has done yeoman's work in advancing the work of the agency. We all owe him a huge debt of gratitude for the work that he's done over the years, for his handling of matters during the transition. He was essentially one half of the investigation and enforcement group until we were able to staff up. And he's done a masterful job. He's going to be missed. I don't know if Brian wants to say a few words, but anytime Pete wants to come back, have a place for it.
We just all want to thank him. I want to thank him in my short time here. Just a really good person. We are going to wish him well in his travels with his wife. And also, he's been discussing possibly volunteering with the American Red Cross, because that's the type of person he is. Very giving of himself and his time. And he won't be a stranger, but we won't see him popping up in the Buffalo box that often. So, Pete, if you want to say anything, we really appreciate you. We will miss you and value your friendship.
I just want to thank everybody. The staff over the last 10 years has been great. Our former commission has been great, and I see that our new commissioner is following in the same footsteps. I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity over the past 10 years. And I hope that all of you enjoy your job as much as I have the past 10 years. And good luck to all.
Thank you, Pete, and good luck to you, and enjoy traveling. Send photos.
Thank you.
Right, that's it for the recruiting and staffing update. Any other questions? Sorry. Budget update is under tab C. We are running well below budget on the personal services side. The burn there is going to increase as we continue to fill staffing. So we're making good progress there. On the NPS side, so we have some overage, and we'll need to make adjustments in the budget, but we will be solid going out of the current fiscal year into next year. Any questions?
Commissioner Braun,
I have one question. The spike in August for service, is that attributable to like across the board salary increase or something?
Three pay periods.
Okay,
We have those bumps every
okay, thank you.
4 or 5 months, and I think we have 1 or 2 more coming in the year. So that literally adds 50%
okay.
to the burn.
Vice Chair Austin, and then Commissioner Edwards.
I may be asking the same question, but we have some remaining staff to be employed. Is that where that difference is going to come out? Between what we're showing and what you've asked for from
Yes, once we fill out the staffing plan, we're going to need, we're almost predictably where we thought we would be.
So we also have, I'm sorry.
So I'm going to say, you'll see in the next item.
And the other thing is we are down to commissioners, which obviously runs a cost as well. Is that factored in?
Are running more or less at budget on the commissioner's side. So when we have additional, we'll have to monitor it closely. And of course, there's a proposal out there that maybe will pay down some of that cost. Let's see.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Commissioner Edwards with that. All right. So the next budget, before we do this, Commissioner Edwards asked a question at the very start of the meeting related to the reference I made about the minutes, and that is we had talked about a working group on the new budget. What happened to us?
We got jumped, I would say, in a sense. I did circulate the materials. Very quickly, there was not a lot of turnaround time to get that out. We wanted to expect. Well, we haven't heard back, surprisingly. We haven't heard back from Division of Budget, so that's when we're going to have to start potentially.
So what's the limit of budget that the commission reviewed budget for the new year? Well, that's not a good thing.
I think it sounds like we had no choice given the demands of the budget office.
Yeah, but we knew. We got the notice at the last minute. Just a minute. We should be planning our budget, like in January.
But they will send it back and we'll still have a chance to talk
Yes,
about it before it's finally approved.
I get that we need to do it. It should be the other way around. It should not, I think that important should not be going forward. For review of the budget. Even if you have to have an emergency meeting with a select group, it should not leave this body unless we've had a chance to look at it. All I know we didn't see.
Yes, understood. And we should reflect that on the minutes so we know. Yeah. Sure.
And apropos of that, and all the good hires that we have made and the progress that's made, we're facing a potential real problem because of the state budget situation overall. I'm not sure how we should approach that, but just to influence what Claudia said, we have to worry about this. April 1st is going to be on us before we know it. And the issue, I'm not sure how, the internal lobbying and the external lobbying. But I think we really need to formulate a plan as to how to convey how important our budget is, and that accommodations have to be made for us, notwithstanding the state budget crisis.
Right.
Actually, I was thinking along the same lines in terms of what we should approach it. And I'm sure this is the right time to have a conversation about future budget. But I think it's important for us to have a real clear understanding of what we actually need to meet our objectives outlined by the legislation. And then saying, given the crisis we're in, here's the budget we're submitting to be consistent with what asked us by the executive office. But it should be real clear that what we're asking for to be consistent with what's being required versus what we need are very different things. And it's going to impact our ability to achieve our objectives.
Indeed. And I think that was in the minutes the last time, and we should just keep making the point.
Yeah. But it should be in the letter that we ultimately send to the Department of Labor.
And there are outside legislative issues, lobbying, if you will, but I'm not sure if we're doing it. We should be sure the public is aware of our issues.
I echo Commissioner Edwards' sentiment about the need for review, but I would note that I think the letter that, or the policy advice request that went out over the executive director's signature did an excellent job of laying out where, well, the priorities we've discussed as a body so far, they're all hidden here quite well. And I know when shared with us,
Yes,
we had an opportunity to comment on the letter, and I made a couple of minor comments, but I know they were accepted. So I know the process wasn't ideal. I'm not saying that, but I do think that in terms of the advocacy that did go forward, even though we didn't approve it as a body, I thought it was strong. So I just wanted to be.
Yeah, I think we shared the budget, but there was not a lot of.
The only thing I would add, but I know this is surprising and petty, but I was surprised you signed your letter in your former capacity as a judge and in your current capacity as the executive director. And I think with, well, I know we've discussed the issue around judges continuing to bear that title, but I just think using two titles is confusing, and attaching an honorific is just uncommon. I mean, it's petty, but
No, but we.
I know just that, and
It was only for consistency's sake with DOB. I'm the same person. Didn't want them to be confused and think somehow I had been stripped of some portion of my identity.
Say that makes it confusing when you sign on the vote.
So noted, and
but the letter was good.
anything else on the budget submission? You have anything else you want to say about that?
Well, if there are any questions, I was going to point out that everyone is familiar with the staffing plan. The expense is approved and the figures underlying that. So we've gone through that. On the non-personal services side, what's driving the additional amounts we need are obviously rent increases that we're facing in Albany and in Manhattan. The cost of streaming commission meetings and committee meetings, which the cost associated with that, that's running about $15,000 a year. We're looking at alternatives. There aren't many to doing it that way. We're paying more because we have more people using it. LexisNexis for legal research and also for background research. We're very heavy users in many aspects of our operation. Meeting room rentals, annual meeting costs, $5,000 each for the year. Our updated audit software, it's very sophisticated. It has a substantial cost associated with it, and then imaging services. There are a number of submitted documents that this agency is more or less the custodian for, so-called 166 forms. Appearance forms, when individuals appear before it's about a dozen agencies, and that's over and above the online filing that's done for the Sunshine Law. We're the repository of that, because we're now subject to FOIL, and for a number of other reasons, we're now imaging all of those, particularly because it facilitates redaction. It also makes it easier to comply with requests, and eventually we'll just try to figure out a way, if we can do it economically, of just making them available online. That ultimately will take burden off staff. It'll allow us to respond much more quickly to requests. It makes it much easier to do redactions, but it's not cheap. It's not an enormous cost, but we're projecting just to keep up with it after we'll take care of the backlog out of this year's budget. But for next, we have a running cost of about $15,000 a year for doing that kind of work. So it all adds up. But overall, the increase we're looking for is about 142,000. So it's not huge. And DOD had asked for a flat budget. We don't think we can do that. And still achieve our mission, as Commissioner Edwards was pointing out. And we've yet to hear back. They did start the cycle much earlier this year than last year. So I imagine they're taking their time and looking at every agency's submissions before they begin to respond. So we will stay on top of that process and make sure everyone is informed as we learn and get responses.
let me just pause here. I'm looking at your screen, and it's just to ask if we're still alive to the public.
I believe you are. Jean, can you confirm that we're still live?
That's my regular boss. Fantastic. Demand.
I'm assuming we are. I signed in and I can still see us, so we can continue. Anything else on the budget submission?
I have nothing else on the budget. Any questions?
Any questions from commissioners? Budget? All right, proposed.
So before that, we have Commissioner for diem.
Yes, I'm
I
sorry.
just wanted to give a report. There were no actual payments in the report period. Excuse me. However, we have payments in process, which I understand will be made in November. I'll just read those in. When they're finalized, we've submitted them, we may have some back. Before they're actually processed.
So are you going to read them?
Yeah, I'm gonna read them in. I didn't know if it was a question.
After you finish.
So Chair Davy, $2,811.82. Vice Chair Austin, $1,821.29. Commissioner Ayers, $1,150.29. Commissioner Caraballo, $1,821.29. Commissioner Cardozo, $4,026.02. Commissioner Edwards, $5,240.21. Commissioner Grunwagen, $1,054.43. Commissioner James, $1,821.29. And Commissioner Whittingham, $3,866.25 for a total submission, pending submission of $23,612.90. Now, I should say these figures include September committee and commission meetings. And for a number of commissioners, Commissioners Whittingham, Edwards, Cardozo, and Chair Davy. It also includes prep time submitted for a number of months. And it's not limited to September.
Ms. Edwards, you have a comment? Okay. You want to comment on the budget then before we go?
Yeah, I think these things are under, on the budget, you talk about the, I had a question about the general funds. And some way you went to get us an amount to contribute to the general funds for fees and has that been, have we included that in the letter that we sent to, for our budget with regard to the amount of money that we're generating?
Yeah.
Isn't there?
It's in the air submission. It doesn't show up in the tables they request necessarily, but we do address those in the miscellaneous receipts report, which is second to last document under tab B. We shows sources of revenue.
So
Those are all those amplified.
you make that.
So, yes, it's in the submission.
Great. So we're ready to proceed. Item number 4, proposed legislative agenda.
Oh, just two things I made before we go on. Just wanted to point out, remind everyone, the roundtable November 1st. Here's our session. And they to discuss our legislative agenda, which we'll get to momentarily. And then I also wanted to point out that the lobbying division is going to be hosting a series of online training sessions for the lobbying application, the online application. For users and other participants, each session will be conducted online, but it will be live. Registration's required. Folks can do that on the website. There's a nifty flyer that they've prepared that's going to come out, I'm sure, electronically. Carol Quinn, our director of lobbying, and her group have been doing an amazing job. And they're going to hold these on a regular basis throughout the year. And it's a great thing to do. And I know that it will take some of the burden off our help desks. And create more opportunities for individuals to get intensive training and to ask their questions about the application in a collective setting. And I believe each of these will be recorded so individuals can also watch them after the fact. And the first one is scheduled for Thursday, November 2nd, 10 a.m. If folks in the public are interested, or in the lobbying community. Any questions about that? Questions?
Comments? Are we ready? Do I dare go on to number 4? Item number 4, the legislative agenda, Mr. Cardozo.
The legislative committee met, to review the proposals that have been put together by staff, and Emily put it all together in the way it is for you. We discussed it at length. We decided 2 items that were in the original draft should not be pushed forward. We reviewed the various other proposals that were not on this agenda that staff and committee and the relevant committee had determined were not appropriate at this time to put in include in the legislative agenda. This is the agenda that we proposed. There's one item that we think we should wait to publicize until a little more developments have occurred. But this is the list of items that we think should be put before the legislature. My thanks to the staff, particularly Emily, who put this all together, and the committee that had a very interesting few-hour meeting to review this.
Mr. Cardozo, for the public, do you want to just do the headlines of each proposal? Just outline.
Sure. Each of these. We want, item 1, the proposal to expressly prohibit people from soliciting, aiding, or inviting others to be in violation of the ethics and lobbying law. Fairly self-explanatory, but it's not yet prohibited explicitly by law. There are a number of changes we're proposing in the Lobbying Act, basically, again, to eliminate the ambiguities that are in the law now. One is to amend to the law. There's an ambiguity between 2 sections of the statute on mandatory training. Another one to impose late fees on lobbyists and their clients who don't show up for their mandated ethics. And another one to clarify that the lobbying, the CAO of each lobbying client listed is responsible. So there's no ambiguity that we can hold him or her responsible. And we're adding again a late fee if you don't file appropriately. In the ethics area, we adopted the proposal of NYPIRG and Reinvent Albany to post financial disclosure statements, candidates on the website, and added violations for public officers with respect to sexual harassment issues, making that a violation of the ethics law. So I think the combination of the very helpful recommendations of the public was this one way. And I should add that because of the outstanding work that Sandy referred to, staff to post more things on the website, it makes some of the proposals academic because the material's on the website, and having checked with staff, we didn't need the law, we just needed the time to do it. And the website now is, as a press release issued a week or 2 ago, reflects, contains a great deal more information without the need for us to respond to FOIA requests.
Right, and that's on the open, what is it, Open New York?
Yes, I'm in New York.
Yeah, the entire lobby data set going back a number of years is now on the Open Meeting website. And there are endless tools on it. It's very, very sophisticated. It is the largest data set that site has hosted. It was an enormous effort on the part of, again, our lobbying director, Carol Quinn, and her team, including Marlena, to get that up and running, and the folks at Open NY. NY, ITS, were involved in moving massive data. It really a huge undertaking for us to get the data out of our servers onto theirs and to create. So very impressive. Got some very positive feedback. So kudos to Carol and her team.
Thank you, Carol, and the entire lobbying team. And Emily, thank you as well, because I know you and your team had a hand there as well. So thank you both. Commissioner Cordova, do you want to say a word about the open meetings law changes that we will be proposing?
Yes. Thanks to Sandy and the staff, we created to the Open Meetings Law Committee suggesting that the physical access requirement that we're all familiar with be amended to avoid the necessity for committee meetings that don't have decision-making, just recommendations, not decision-making. But we don't have to have physical access. They certainly should be online and observable, but we don't have to open our homes if we're having a conference call meeting. As long as they can watch it online, there's no need to open your living room to that. And we, after consultation with the Open Meetings Law Committee, they said they'd like a letter from us, and they would begin considering whether in their report, which they have to make the legislature by the end of the year, they would recommend that. It would certainly be very preferable. And so I think we circulated the draft the other day. So the plan is to submit this letter to the Open Meetings Law Committee in the next few days, then wait to hear what they have to say, then formalize it into a legislative proposal.
Thank you. Other questions?
I think the staff has done really an excellent job in the draft. You know, we had a couple of comments. Yeah, I think.
Thanks. So what I wanted to know, I know that the Open Meetings Committee was going to do a report about the use of teleconference for virtual appearances. And I know they're going to do that for December. I'm just wondering, is there a draft of that or something? Not the committee, the Open Meetings.
No, they want to get our draft. Yes, their report's not going to be done for another month or two.
Okay, so they don't even have any.
Right, and that's why we wanted to wait to formally put it on the agenda to see what they had to say. Be politically realistic at the same time.
And then my other questions are, so what happens if our proposal isn't taken? Will the ability to appear virtually in the event of an emergency, will that still, will that expire and right, it's due to expire?
Ability to show up in an emergency, that provision expires by law sometime at the end of
July 20.
So the legislature will have to, I think, address that issue. And so what we're trying to do is think that they're addressing that issue in the same section of the law is what the court's determined to be the physical access requirement. So the timing should be perfect.
Okay, so is there a possibility that will expire and not be reviewed and this one won't be taken? And is there anything we can do to avoid that?
We're doing everything we can, and we will appropriately lobby, I'm sure, at the right time. But, and there are, of course, a number of other organizations that are in the same position you're in, both on the emergency issue and on the physical access requirements. So we're hoping, and that's why we want to see what develops over the next couple of months. Get a broad consensus, not necessarily that we would be organizing, but there's just a lot of other people who agree with us.
So, okay. And then is there the opportunity to do things in the alternative with Bill, with lobbying for Bill? So, we're asking for this, but is it, I gave a couple of suggestions because I figured if we can't have everything, then maybe we could have something.
Well, I think, as we all know, we should affirm what we want, but see what happens down the road in terms of the political developments. And there's certain things we have to say, well, we want to do this, but you should add that. Obviously, you could do that as you negotiate, or at the Open Meetings Law Committee.
But we wouldn't put forth some of those.
But we have to manage judgment. We shouldn't compromise in what we want before we see whether it's necessary to compromise.
Just asking what are the alternatives? No, I'm trying, because I said to the email saying, these are things that maybe these are things that might be more acceptable. For example, one of the things I was saying, which part of it was adopted in that somebody could come here and watch, which was part of what I was putting forward. But also maybe there's a possibility that only one commissioner or one officer is here, and that then we have access.
Right. No,
Access to the public. We still give that. We still have that, or that part of it, without everyone having to be here physically in a quorum.
And I think the answer to that is that those are the kind of things you would be sitting across the table on to negotiate. But I don't think we should be putting.
Yeah, but who will be sitting across the table?
Well,
do we get a chance to give these, and we gave our letter and those were our suggestions. Do we have the opportunity to say, well, then if we can't do this, can we?
It's like everything else in the legislative proposals. You're going to have Sandy and his staff and talking to the right people in Albany.
That's my point.
I think that's a little premature.
And then,
I should say, we're not thinking of limiting our effort to submitting a writing. We're planning to be as proactive as we can in the process. And yes, we may have to prioritize, but we're not at that point yet. First, we want to formulate the agenda, and then once there's agreement on it, and I think the plan is to come back in November to finalize it. Then we will work out the plan.
What would be nice is if the Committee on Open Government signed off on the proposal, then the except it has to all go to the legislature.
Yeah, and then of course there are lots of other government agencies that are equally affected. And if some of them come forward, that would help. But we have to wait and see how this develops.
Mr. Bromley.
I have a couple of questions. One is trying to understand the process. Whatever the agency's legislative program turns out to be, I'm curious as to who actually is going to be responsible for moving it. By that I mean, is the plan that right now we have conceivably 8 bills we've got, counting the open meetings law. Is the plan that staff is going to be drafting bills, 8 members in support, seeking the sponsorship, or are we going to work with the other, identified organizations that are interested to solicit their input in the drafting? I don't know. My perspective, to have an 8-bill legislative program for such a small agency, well, for any agency, that's a big legislative program. For a small agency like this, with a staff of, how many are we up to? 50,
We're going up
That's a lot.
between 65 and 68.
That's a
But
lot.
everybody works really hard.
No question about that.
Who writes the bills?
I mean, that's,
For many of them, we do have drafts, I will say, so we're,
okay.
some, at least preliminarily. I would say all of the above, to the extent we can work with others who share the agenda, who have a common goal, and many of these have come out of the process of receiving recommendations and proposals through the public hearing process, other recommendations that have come in. So there are others who share interest in pushing it,
Yeah.
but pushing various proposals. So we'll be, to the extent we could appropriately do it, we will align our efforts with theirs. Certainly will want to talk with appropriate staff members, legislators, to the extent we can at the appropriate time. There may be opportunities to submit testimony. We'll have to see how that works out if there are hearings taking place. I don't, at this point, it's too early to know, for example, on the open meetings law, if that's ultimately part of the
I
agenda.
think it's a one-off and that has conceivably the support of the Committee on Open Government.
But it's a work in progress.
Right.
It's a work in progress.
It's really the other 7 that are more co-league initiatives where, again, it strikes me as a lot of work. And just thinking about the process of agencies I worked at, have always had a dedicated legislative liaison, person whose job it was to be talking to potential sponsors, for watching the committee agendas, all that day-to-day legislative monitoring. It's a big effort. And I'm just thinking 7 bills is a lot. And I just been asking about the preparedness to handle an agenda this big. Nothing more to say, but I do have a substantive question. One of the 7, and maybe I missed this, but there's a proposal to make sexual harassment a violation of the ethics law. Right, that was number 7, I thought.
It's in 7, but it's actually, I would say there are 8 because there are 2 proposals.
But whether, but it's more the
They have penalties for,
but to my knowledge, I know we've had matters that have touched on that, question of whether or not particular conduct constitutes sexual harassment and the like. But I don't know that this body, this commission, has ever had a substantive conversation about whether or not we think that belongs explicitly within our jurisdiction. Because it's something I've thought about a lot. And I have no idea what my colleagues think about it, but from my perspective, it's a matter that's addressed in substantive law in a number of different places. It's prohibited under, the state human rights law. It's a violation of federal law. There are a plethora of, every agency has its own, or employer has its own system for addressing it. And my question is, what's the value added to vesting yet another body with the authority to look at a question or conduct that can be examined by many?
if I could just briefly, and some of this maybe needs to be discussed in executive session, because there are legal issues embedded in it.
And you want to hold it to the?
Well, I just want to say on the record is the position of staff that sexual harassment in the government workplace is a violation of the public officers law. That has been the consistent position of the ethics agencies in the state for quite a few years. What is out there, and we would not be alone in asking for this. This is part of the recommendations we received, is to have an specific provision in section 74(3) that specifically targets and defines the conduct. But it's the position staff, and it's been the position of prior agencies, ethics agencies, that sexual harassment in the government workplace is what we're talking about here by public officers, is governed by Section 74. And it is a violation of the public officers to engage in that type of conduct.
Mr. Cardozo, did you have a comment?
No, I just wanted to say, it has been, I think, a consistent position of this agency that it is a violation of it, but it's not necessarily accepted yet by, I think, among others, Cuomo raised the issue. And so we're going to eliminate, adopting of this would eliminate that issue.
Commissioner Ayers.
And I think this is a general comment that has nothing to do with any pending matter, but to directly address Commissioner Groeneweg's question. I mean, for me, it's number one, we've seen, and I'm talking nationally, and I'm sure it applies to New York as well, but I'm keeping my comments general. We've seen repeated failures of institutions to address this issue adequately. And so for me, the answer to your question about why add an institutional oversight mechanism to the already existing institutional oversight mechanisms, probably the other mechanisms seem to not work. I mean, just speaking as a professor who sends students into the world of government all the time, this is a daily concern for me. How do I make sure that I'm sending my students into safe environments? We're so far from the world where that's safe that I think adding an institutional mechanism makes sense. I also think it makes sense for it to be this institutional, because I do think it's unethical to sexually harass people. I think that for a government official, that's a profound betrayal of the public trust. And so I agree with the existing interpretation, but I also support clarifying it. And I also, just on your procedural point, I think it's valuable for folks to know if this got lost in the shuffle, that staff worked hard, and I think it may have been my request, so I'm extra grateful, but to prepare a list of not only the proposals that the committee members felt were going forward with and that the staff felt, but also the proposals that didn't make it into this list of 8. That's not in the meeting materials, but it was, if anybody's looking for it, I dug back, it's on October 16th, it came from Emily. We circulated it.
Yeah, she just said it. Yeah, October 16th, right?
Yeah, but I think so. I think this is the appropriate moment to talk about people's views on whether these things should or shouldn't be on the executive agenda. So I think this is the conversation, and you've raised it just the right time. Right. But, yeah.
Is there any possibility that one or more of the proposals would be taken up by the governor and become bills?
Quite possibly, and I will say, certainly we'll be talking with the chamber as part of the initiative, legislative initiative.
Certainly, some of them seem to be right in her wheelhouse.
Right, I think we've got a pretty good package here. I do think it would be, to one of Mr. Groeneweg's points, a good idea for staff at the next meeting to talk to us about sort of the critical path from here to submission.
These would have to be submitted when to be considered. It doesn't have to take line because.
And I think that would be a part of that proposal, yeah.
Yeah, whether it would be program bills or.
Yeah, there used to be a deadline for departmental agency bills. I don't know when that is. You know, elected officials got a later.
Well, let's get a report back on that. So we'll ask the committee to stay on top of this with staff and to speak to us next time about how we see those proceedings.
I'm sure our committee would agree.
I have another question. Does the agency have a practice of commenting on bills that are out there?
That are relevant.
Yeah, like once a bill is moving in my house, it looks like it's going to get traction. where we know we might have a concern. Like the bill last year, increased, the one Carol wrote about, that was gonna have all the.
Nominations.
Yes,
appointments, Yes, and we commented on that.
Yes,
We
so
commented to
That was-
EOB and we
that was after it was
provided comments
passed,
to the.
right? That's when it was pending signature by the governor, right?
Right.
Do we have a practice of commenting earlier in the process? To,
We have not had an occasion during my tenure to comment on proposals.
and I didn't know what the answer would be, because I think that can cut both ways.
I don't know, prior commissions, they went in earlier in the process, but at least during my tenure, our commentary has come typically after either both chambers of the legislature or perhaps one has advanced the bill. And typically we're asked about the burden on the agency.
General
So rather
counsel.
than taking a consensual.
I would like to add to that. I would like to add that Executive Director Berlin is correct that generally we are asked most often by the Division of the Budget to comment, or even the Chamber to comment on legislation that may have already passed both houses and either not yet delivered to the governor or delivered to the governor. But there are occasions, at least one I can recall, where even before a particular bill has passed either house of the legislature, but there may be signs that it's moving, particularly through the final weeks of the legislative session. We have been asked at times to comment on a bill even before it's been passed and sent to the governor. So it doesn't happen often, but it has happened.
Still on, we just have that pop up here. Thank you.
Do we see, does the commission see the comments? Do you circulate the comments? Are people seeing the comments on the issue of appointments?
I believe we did circulate those. No. I'm relatively certain we did circulate this.
You did, I saw it.
Yeah.
But we have, again,
I think I can find
in
it.
my tenure, we haven't done it proactively. We've responded to requests.
So can we put at the top of our email list, those comments again? Thank you. Anything else on this? I'm going to propose we take a 2-minute break because the next two things are probably going to take some time. So Emily, can we disconnect for 10 minutes? Come back at.
Mr. Chair, Chair
yes.
Davey? Chair
Sir?
Davey, did we actually, I'm curious as to whether the commissioners wanted to actually formally adopt the program, the legislative program?
We're gonna wait till.
We were going to, well, let me just
We're
say,
gonna wait, we're gonna wait.
Hold on, hold that.
the plan, what we were planning to do was discuss these at the round table and then come back in November
All right.
with, as informed by that discussion rather than.
That's based.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
We appreciate your eagerness though.
Emily, a 10-minute break.
So,
We'll
okay,
be back
let
at 11:40.
me just, let you know when we're out. Jean, are you all set to do our countdown? So when we're clear, please?
I am. You guys will be clear in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live.
All right, so we are back in the continuing the public section of this
meeting is being recorded.
October 25th meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying Government. We're going to go to the Code of Conduct discussion, and we're going to turn to our Vice Chair, Lynn Austin. Vice Chair Austin.
Thank you, Chairman. We all should have an updated copy with Comments by staff? Does anybody have it?
No. I don't get anything. I don't have it.
All right.
Thank you.
And we were up to number 6.
Well, I think just to make it clearer, since we're ultimately going to be referring to it at other occasions, I went through a numbering program with regard to just listing what the numbers are. Can I just have one moment? No. On page 1, conflicts of interest is going to be Roman numeral 1. Then avoiding conflicts of interest and prohibited conduct will be A. And then, prevent, on page 2, preventing conflicts of interest and refusal will be B. Oh, I see. I'm going to be adding at the end of B1 a subparagraph H, which I'll explain in a few moments. Then we go to next page 4, gifts and special treatment, that's Roman numeral 2. And each paragraph will become A and B.
Sorry, here.
On page 4. Gifts and special treatment.
And what do you want my favorite?
That's going to be Roman numeral 2. The paragraphs will be A and B. I'm going to now going to be A and B. Right. Then confidential information will be Roman 3. Prohibited political activity will be Roman 4. Page 5, both commission policies, Roman 5. Paragraphs will be A and B. And violations of code of conduct will be Roman 7. I'm sorry. Okay. The reason I went into law and not accounting.
A lot of 6 then.
So that's Roman 6. Roman 7 will be amendments to code of conduct. And statutory references will be Roman 8.
Okay, go through again, just go Roman.
So Roman 1 will be on page 1, conflicts of interest.
Roman 2.
Roman 2 will be,
Page 4. Indicate special treatments.
Roman 2 will be on page 4, gifts and special treatment.
Roman 3.
Confidential information. Roman 4, prohibited political activity. Post-commission policies.
6.
Violations of code of conduct.
So,
And code of conduct. And then the statutory reference will be Roman 8.
Thank you.
okay. Are we ready to go?
Now, yes.
All right.
Okay, I will get to H when we get to it. I would note that in the introduction, the only point that has been not voted on and approved is the red bullet point at the bottom of the introduction, business with the state.
All right, do you want to move it?
Is there any discussion on that?
I was under the impression we voted on that and it didn't pass. So am I wrong?
I believe we didn't vote on it because we didn't have a quorum at that point.
Yeah, we did. We voted on it. We voted.
No, yeah. This is St. John.
I say John. Let's hear from Keith.
Commissioner Caraballo, I believe Commissioner Caraballo is correct, which is, so I think we voted on this before and it did not pass. I think the direction from the commissioners was for staff to revise it. And so we're bringing back a revised version to see if this is more to your liking. We just need confirmation that this language is what you would prefer to see over what you did not want to adopt at a prior meeting.
And part of the problem, and part of the problem was is that we were down to 7 members at that point, and some things didn't pass just because we didn't have enough members.
No, this one would not, this one did not pass, so it was
I
a
move to
full vote.
approve the stuff.
Let me just give an explanation, what staff has done, because we understood, maybe incorrectly,
Yes, incorrect.
that we were asked to redraft it.
That's what I-
But what we did was move the prohibition and we changed it to, in effect, a permissive provision. So it would depend on whether or not there's a conflict of interest in a given proposed
We
district.
have a motion that's been made. Let's get it seconded and we can have a discussion, then we can vote it up or down. Is there a second to the motion that's been made by Commissioner Cardoza? You want to second it?
I'll second it.
Okay. So discussion.
So the minutes of the last meeting, which are consistent with my recollection, say that first there was a motion to remove the public officers law citation from the end of this. That motion carried 6-2, so we removed the citation. According to the minutes, which Commissioner Caraballo made a motion to remove that provision. That motion failed 3-5. So the provision wasn't removed. So it stayed in, although a motion to remove failing to pass
Doesn't necessarily mean
doesn't mean that anything's in the document.
Right.
Which is why it's now back to us.
So it's now back to us, I guess. We didn't actually adopt anything, and if I understand, but for the sentence in front of us now, and thank you, is nodding.
Yes.
The sentence in front of us now is a new proposal, which we're perfectly free to vote on, and in no way bound by anything that happened in the last.
Maybe this is a reference to something else. It says, let me see. And then it says on page 14 of the minutes, a motion was made by Commissioner Whittingham and seconded by Commissioner Caraballo to remove paragraph 6 in its entirety. Motion carried 6-2.
That's the.
Is that something else?
Yeah, that's paragraph 6 under conflicts of interest.
Yeah, all right. The other six, okay, so okay. I see. The amendment carried 6.
All right, so before us, we have in the introduction, the last bullet,
Wait, I'm sorry. Right,
the last bullet in the introduction on page 1.
that's what we're talking about. But
Right.
didn't we voted on the entirety of the introduction then with it? I see here, let's see. Chair Davian as commissioner would now vote on the entire introductory section of the draft code for members of the commission. And that carries 6-2, so it carried with that.
Are you right? I was.
prevent us from considering an amendment, which is what we're doing.
Even though we voted it down, we're going to vote it on it again.
We voted it up, we approved it.
Yeah,
And we're now just suggesting an addition to it.
Right. So we did not approve the amendment you made, but it didn't necessarily mean that we affirmed what was there. We then voted for the entire introduction, which could have meant that we affirmed what was there, but we asked staff to go back and bring alternative language, and that's what they've done.
I didn't hear that in my minutes or see it, so, but I guess, anyone else have any recollection?
Well, the request to revisit that.
The answer is,
It's like readopting it. We voted yes, now we're asking to vote again, and we're going to ambiguity.
the motion is to approve and add to what we've previously adopted. That's
It's just an amendment. Commissioner Harris.
I just wanted to say, I actually think it's important for us to be careful about this one, because my sense was that some folks felt really strongly about it. And I don't want to move quickly through something before making sure that at least everybody understands what we're voting on and understands why they're voting on it. So, and I was wrong before. So we did vote to adopt the provision. And I guess my question is, so this language here, is this substantively different in any way from what we adopted as part of the introduction, but then failed to? But then, of course, we didn't adopt the code of conduct in general. So I think we're perfectly free to consider changes. And my question is this different than what was on the table?
It's different in the sense that the prior iteration of this imposed a restriction restricted commissioners from providing goods or services to state agencies.
The Sandy, I've got the prior language. Business with the state by acknowledging as a state officer, there are restricted, there may be restrictions, I think we added, from contracting for work and providing goods and services to entities subject to the commission's jurisdiction. Business with the state by acknowledging as a state officer.
You know, I wouldn't spend a lot of time on what we thought we were going to do. The question is, we gave instructions that I recall to the staff to help us find some different language because there were commissioners who were unsettled by the language I think we actually adopted when we adopted the introductory section. And so rather than make it restrictive, we have made it, what's the term?
I would say permissive.
And just talk more about it.
The idea is to be an assessment of the case-by-case basis of whether the particular service or sale of goods presents a conflict of interest for the commission, the commissioner's role as a commissioner, rather than there being a blanket prohibition, which would exist for state officers subject to section 73, sub 4. It was prohibited unless there's a competitive bidding process involved.
Commissioners.
So the language that's in front of us, I'm not clear on what it allows and doesn't allow in the sense that it says undertaking to accept limitations or restrictions working for providing goods and services to entities we regulate, but is accepting limitations the same? Is it a prohibition? Or is it like it says accepting a limitation, but I'm not sure what the limitation is. Is it like we could only do it with commission approval? Is it?
Can we be more explicit, Kavita?
Or I'm not sure what the intent is.
Yeah. I believe, and Keith or Sandy, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe with the introductory paragraph, the idea is to kind of set parameters for the rest of the code of conduct. And so with respect to business with the state, instead of what the prior language was, which was more restrictive, this is not giving a blanket prohibition on it necessarily, which I think was part of the concerns that were raised before, but it is acknowledging that there may be instances where there could be a conflict. And so there may be restrictions or you may need to accept that limitation or you may need to accept that restriction depending on the circumstance.
And do you have a sense of where those? Sorry, go ahead.
And so if I might pick up on where Kavita has just left off, she's absolutely correct, I believe. And in terms of what we're talking about with respect to limitations or restrictions, a string that might be attached to a commissioner's ability to contract with the state, for example, is that that activity might need to be disclosed in advance, or at the very least disclosure. So that might be a string attached, that might be a restriction, that might be a kind of limitation on sort of unfettered ability to contract with the state, for example. So I hope that sort of gets to Commissioner Ayer's curiosity, rather than have what used to be a fairly prohibitive provision. This now, in response to some concerns that were raised by other commissioners, this allows some flexibility so that the determination of whether there is a conflict is made on a case-by-case basis, as opposed to uniformly prohibited. And in that case-by-case analysis, out of which may come a requirement to disclose the nature of that business with the state before the commissioners.
How about let's try a revision of this. This is so, it seems to be unclear. So how about business with the state : commissioners working for or providing services, goods and services to state entities shall be subject to the commission's jurisdiction.
Subject to the commission's jurisdiction is a modifier of services to the entity.
How about let's do this approval of commissioners working for or providing goods to state entities will be needed?
So,
Kavita.
sure, so I just think that I'm not against that language. I think it just may belong somewhere else. And the reason I say that is just looking at the other bullets under the introduction. It's like I said, it's generally setting the parameters like impartiality by maintaining blah, blah, blah. If you're gonna, confidentiality, what does that mean? So I'm not against the language that you're proposing. I believe it'll fit somewhere else.
So these are general guidelines in this first section, and then we can get more specific elsewhere in the document. It's not the idea. Okay, Mr. Growling.
Back when I think the draft that originally included this kind of introduction that was a revision to the old preamble was, when I drafted that, I was looking at this aspirational document on our website, thinking that this was purposefully in the introduction. So it wasn't a substantive part of the code. There was no express prohibition in here, but it was more conceptually that we as the members of the commission understood all these things. So I think that's what Kavita was suggesting, that if there's an express limitation someplace, it wouldn't belong here. But I think to address the concern that I think Commissioner Carvalho and Commissioner Whittingham have expressed most often is that not everything they're doing is going to present a conflict of interest, but that's not expressly acknowledged here. So I was thinking of a simpler amendment that could just say business with the state, by undertaking to accept, insert, when necessary to avoid a conflict of interest, limitations and restrictions. It doesn't speak to when that decision as to the necessity to avoid a conflict of interest would take place, but it acknowledges that conceptually, you're accepting those limitations and restrictions on your ability to do any work for the state when it's necessary to avoid a conflict of interest. And then we can either in the text of this or in a further amendment address the specifics. But I think the overarching goal was to communicate publicly that this commission, this body, not the agents, but this body, we were committed to this broadest statement of ethical conduct possible with no exclusion. But to the extent we need modification to reflect the fact that we are not state employees, that we are not.
We're not full-time state employees. We are state employees.
We're state office. Well, that's.
The IRS thinks I'm a state employee.
But again, I understood, but not for the purpose of this code. But to make clear that we're not trying to treat ourselves different from other state employees, but that our circumstance as per diem officers with outside work requires some accommodation so as to not discourage persons from accepting the appointment.
But while also recognizing that there is a potential conflict for us to actually be employed by, in any form, agencies over which we have jurisdiction.
Well, but employed by and having a contract with are two different things.
Well, let's go to just providing goods and services, to use the language.
Yeah, may make the suggestion. By avoiding provision of services or working for any entity which is subject to the commission's jurisdiction when a conflict of interest becomes apparent.
Commissioners.
So it sounds like Glenn's suggestion and Nancy's suggestion have in common that they're just trying to make clear that I want to try to agree on the substance and then we can figure out what language. But it sounds like folks are agreeing that the proposal is we're only going to avoid or prohibit provision of services or goods or employment when there's a conflict. And which is, I think, very significantly different from the last proposal. And I'm directing this question to Commissioner Caraballo and Commissioner Whittingham because they were your concerns. And it seems to me like this is a move away from that. In other words, as long as there's no conflict, folks would still be able to have that employment or those contracts. So my question for my colleagues is if
Maybe principle, right? Because I think we're getting at a principle here. That principle is conditioned by some oversight of this commission. So it's not a blanket opportunity for goods and services. Who determines whether or not there's a conflict of interest? And that's this commission, I think, at the end of the day. So how do we, so my question would be, do we reflect that in this principle? I think is reflected there now, where we talk about the commission's jurisdiction. So shall be subject to the commission's jurisdiction.
Can I hear yours again, Nancy?
And let me just say again, it is prefatory. It was intended to soften what would have been otherwise a blanket restriction, a total restriction or prohibition on it. And the question of how procedurally it would be implemented is something that's not intended to be covered by this specific provision.
But it
general.
It forecasts the fact that this commission does have jurisdiction. So that needs to be there no matter whatever language we use.
I just, you don't have to answer. I'm curious about my colleagues who were concerned about this in the last meeting. Does this?
This is narrow, which is good. And the other one was only. I think that is the idea, is to avoid conflicts of interest. And so I think, that's why I wanted to hear the language.
Yeah, and the conception that Keith and I had with this was that if there was a situation where there could be a conflict, the commissioner would bring it to the commission.
Let's hear from
the rest of it.
Commissioner Whittingham. Do you have any comments there?
No comment.
No comments. All right, Commissioner Cardozo.
I'm having trouble understanding the concept. How do we know about potential conflict? In other words, and I'm not accusing you of doing anything improper. If you are representing an entity, sign a retainer agreement of some kind with them, and you don't think there's a conflict, commission's attention, someone may have a question. How do we?
Don't we do that now?
Well, we only do what we have.
I don't know you.
I think
Well, the question is, you had enough sense to know, and we trust you enough to be honest about it, to bring it before the commission. So how are we not doing that now?
But I think what we want to reflect in these principles is this notion that of both self-reporting, that's sort of a fundamental principle, what it means to be a commissioner, and that when it comes to goods and services to state entities, and that the commission has jurisdiction. I think those are the two pieces that we.
I mean, those are questionnaires. What we've now dubbed Section 6, a popular acclaim, is the section on violations of code of conduct, which says any conduct violative of this code of conduct will subject the member to action by the full commission. So it seems to me that the whole document sort of has an enforcement mechanism, which is a conversation by all of us.
See it as a whole. Yeah. All right. So I think the language here probably can stay as is. And Mr. Groenewegen?
If I can hear, yes, yeah, so it would say, it would say business with the state, by undertaking to accept, when necessary to avoid a conflict of interest, limitations or restrictions on their working for, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. So you're inserting
I'll accept it as a friendly amendment.
Actually, Michael made the
Yeah,
motion.
I'll accept, I'll accept.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're the mover.
Because the motion is to accept the text, so yes, so it's fine.
For the benefit of those here in Albany, could you repeat your amendment, Commissioner?
Yes. We'll read, business with the state, colon, by undertaking to accept, comma, reads, when necessary to avoid a conflict of interest, comma, limitations or restrictions, the remainder of the paragraph.
So you're only adding
It's,
to avoid conflict.
that's right.
of interest.
In undertaking, I'm kind of reading as agreeing to accept. And you accept them, when you accept them, when necessary to avoid conflicts of interest. You could put it there, or you could put it.
That's all right. Let's leave it. Yeah, that will be the bad. All right, so are we clear on this amendment?
Because people have had such concerns about this language, before we vote, I just want to ask specifically if anybody has concerns or objections to the, I don't want to just have a closely balanced vote. I want to know whether people are.
And we've heard expressions and we asked explicitly where they were, the response was.
Okay, so as amended,
As amended, well, it's a friendly amendment, so the motion is as stated by Commissioner Groenewegen. And we're basically adding after undertaking.
After accept.
Accept to avoid a conflict of interest, comma, and
when necessary,
conflict of interest,
comma, and the rest remains the same.
right. Are we clear? Ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we have 9.
Could we have the names of those opposed? For those in Albany, can we identify who's opposed?
Just about to do that. We have 9 of us here.
Okay.
The two people to vote for Commissioners Whittingham and Carvalho. And, am I right?
Yes.
Okay, and then the other 7 of us approved it. Supported it.
Thanks.
Which means the motion is approved.
Can
Yes.
I? Shadows can approve. What troubles me about this process, and I think that I want to come off this visit with them shares and her comments. This is it's a highly contested conversation we had at the last meeting. And I think that at least our goal is to make sure everyone is heard. That whatever decision is made, we didn't get crushed. I think that we felt that at the last meeting. It just seems to me that something that highly contested, for staff to work on it without picking up the phone and calling those who wouldn't bring attention to make sure they were comfortable with the language makes me uncomfortable. And we've done this on more than one occasion, that staff makes decisions in isolation. And I think there are times when Cindy will call me and says, Claudia, this is what I think about that. Let's work on the language. And so that we get to the meeting, you don't have to have this, but to me, it creates more divisiveness and bring us together. And I just pick up the phone. There were 2 people who had me rushed, and I wasn't in the argument.
I think we have to be careful with that, Commissioner Edwards, because we don't want to lead people to believe that just because they work something out with staff, it's going to be the will of the commission. So I think we have to think through that a little bit.
Suggesting that we're all, I'm sure I understand that's not what I'm saying. The point I'm making is minimizes the fight we need to have on the floor. It's not saying it's any guarantee, but to say this is what we've come up with to address your concerns. Does it work for you? What would work for you? Let's put that on and see that this at the constant floor and people can be okay with it. Because I just feel that there's this tension in this room You know, there's this tension in this room that's not bringing us together as a group that makes us more divisive. And I just think that there are ways in which we can calm that down. And one is simply when staff is asked to do something, and I'm not saying in every instance, but when you find that there's a real difference of opinion, go directly to the people who serves with you and say, hey, this is what we're going to present.
Just for the record, I did have a conversation with Commissioner Caraballo, not on the specific language, but about getting a better understanding of what her concerns were. And frankly, we crafted the language, I hoped, as a way to balance the competing interests. So staff was not insensitive to that. In fact, staff pursued that. I did have a conversation with Commissioner Whittingham, but not about that specific provision. I didn't have the understanding that that was the same issue.
So then
I would have, had I understood that. I knew Commissioner Caraballo was very much concerned.
So what I'm thinking is about, it is needs to be an intentional effort to have a conversation with those people who are concerned, not to guarantee that you're going to pass anything at the meeting. That's not the case, but at least to make sure that you are sort of on the same page.
Precisely why, well, I had the conversation to assess whether it was possible, and I thought it was. So I regret that.
Why don't we say we hear the point, it's a point well taken, and that staff will work overtime to engage commissioners around contentious issues before we get to a meeting on it. But I do want to be clear about two things from at least where I sit. One is none of us should consider anything final until it's being, I just want to say it, until it's being voted on. So that's one. And two, I want to say, we are an ethics commission held to higher standards. And we don't want those standards to be so high that they eliminate any category of people from participating on a commission like this. But we are an ethics commission, and that can't be taken too lightly. And just let me finish, please. And if the public sees us cutting corners as commissioners to meet our own needs, which is the point I'm going to make another matter in executive session, then we run the risk of undermining the effectiveness of the commission. And I just feel a need to make that statement.
And I only want to respond to that, to say, it seems to be being said in this select situation. And it feels offensive.
No. Wait, but let me just.
I'm replying to you.
Edwards, I understand. It's not about this particular situation. You can reach that conclusion, but I want to be clear to you and to the public. That is not my intent. My intent always is going to be to call everyone and myself, and I suspect at some point I'll be hung on my own petard. But so be it. That's the point of having principles that guide an ethics commission so that we can exhibit to the state, to the people of the state of New York, how we believe public officials should comport themselves and entrust it with the amount of authority and responsibility with which we've been entrusted and those over whom we have oversight. Vice Chair Austin, and then we'll come back.
I would just point out that the last time we met, the motion to remove this particular section was voted down, did not pass. So we either have the old section or we put something in that tried to address the concerns that were made. So really, what you're talking about is exactly what was done. So can we move on there?
Commissioner Edwards and then Commissioner Harris. If you want to make another point.
I just feel that, I would say I accepted to serve because of my commitment to public service, my commitment to high ethics. I think we all came on that purpose. appreciate you saying that. It says that you need to feel you need to say that because we're all here in those same circumstances. And I trust my colleagues have the public's best interest in mind. And it just seems to feel, when you say that, to me, it makes me feel like, why are you even like that? I mean, that's how I'm receiving it. I mean, you're saying that's what your intent is, but I can't tell you what your intent is, but I can tell you how I'm receiving it. And I don't feel comfortable with, I don't feel comfortable with what was stated, how it was stated, and the circumstances under which it's been stated. Shut up, I'm saying.
Commissioner Ayers.
I strongly agree with the process point that Commissioner Edwards is making, that when somebody seems to have significant concerns about, the best thing to do is to reach out to them and see if, so that when we as a commission are presented with the issue for a vote, those of us who have strong views about it can report back. We talked, we tried to reach a resolution. Maybe we didn't. Maybe we still disagree. So here's a proposal and we're going to vote it up or down. But it is a really uncomfortable situation now that, Commissioner Whittingham is opposed to this proposal. I don't really have a sense of why. And maybe for reasons involved, maybe she's a nefarious conspiring individual who has all kinds of plans to profit off of her ethics commission service, but I doubt it. I think it's more likely that there's a principled position there somewhere, but how do I know? Because we haven't, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with trying to work those things out before the fact. I certainly, Chair Davey, I'm really not sure why you're saying this stuff about, we're accepting a higher commitment to public service right now as opposed to half an hour ago or half an hour later.
Well, I've said it before in other settings.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just wondering what it has to do, like, Commissioner Edwards is raising a process point, which is just, it's good to consult with people, and I'm
not opposed, I'm not opposed.
Okay, so as long as you're not disagreeing with that point, then that's great. And I just want to say, I think it's important for all of us to try. I'm not putting Commissioner Whittingham on the spot, asking why she's opposed to something. She has every right to not share that. But it is an uncomfortable situation for all of us to be in. And I'm not saying anybody in particular has the job of avoiding that. Maybe sometimes it happens. But I think it is the best practice.
Commissioner Whittingham, would you like to speak to this?
Not at the moment. Thank you.
Commissioner Gromway.
I didn't understand. I agree that this top, I watched the last meeting because I wasn't here, and Sean was very well articulated, but I think, and on this and the other related issue on communications, I think one reason I suspect, or when I heard the chair say what he was saying about what the commitment to serve on an ethics body means, the timing of it, I think, was now because this provision has very different implications for each of us. Me as a retiree who I don't have contact with, I have no business contacts with the state. I don't belong to any organization. So for me, to hold myself to a certain standard is very different and has different day-to-day implications than it does for members of this body who are still in the workforce who have dealings with governmental entities for a variety of, sometimes consulting, sometimes other things. And so I think it comes up now because the implications are different for each of us where we are in the rest of our lives. That said, I think, so it's easy for me to say that's fine, but I think for those that are affected by it, it is imperative that we understand their concerns and we find a way, if possible, to address them. And if we can't address them, then if they can't be addressed, then so be it. But to hear that there was follow-up with Commissioner Whittingham on one issue, but not this issue, is a little surprising. And it seems to me that I think it's imperative on our code of conduct. We should all be able to feel confident that we can obstruct, live by it. And if there's a reason some people think they can't and it cannot be addressed, so be it. But if I think we should make every good faith effort to try to address it. And if we can't, then then I think it kicks in that we have to acknowledge that. But I think we should continue to try, especially on the code of conduct.
Sure. Any other comments? All right, can we move on to the next section, Commissioner Austin?
Sure. All right, in paragraph 1A1, yeah.
Let's just read what the,
F, sub 1, every member is strongly encouraged to seek counsel of the executive director, which would be or the general counsel. I'm on page 3.
Yeah, great.
What about page 2, number 6?
number 7.
A6.
Oh, my page. Sorry, my page.
1A6.
My bad. Sorry. Okay, forgive me, we are now on page 2. And it's paragraph A6. We originally presented this at the last meeting. It reads as follows: initiating and the preparatory language is to avoid conflicts members are prohibited from. And this is 6. Initiating or knowingly engaging in substantive communications without prior authorization by the commission with any person who has any direct or indirect interest in any matter before the commission or any matter that may reasonably be expected to come before the commission about the matter. With respect to any discussion with such persons, it should be person or persons, concerning other matters, such discussions shall be disclosed to the commission, executive director, and general counsel promptly in writing. This was previously on, the original text was tabled, and this is revised language. If you would like to know what the original said, the initial was initiating or knowingly engaging in substantive communications with any person who has any direct or indirect interest in any matter before the commission.
Yeah, we talked a lot about this in Commissioner Harris.
Yeah, so my recollection is at the last meeting, there was a 6-2 vote to remove this provision, followed by a motion that I made to replace it with some revised text, which was rejected 5-3. So I think this text that's in red doesn't address the reasons why we voted to remove it the last time, which is that the word matter isn't defined, which prohibits all kinds of things that some of us didn't think should be prohibited. So but whatever we do, I don't think we should start with this text. I think we should either go back to the motion that failed last time, if people might feel differently about it, or we should continue on without provision 6. But I would oppose any motion to go with what's here in red. Would be my, for the reasons we talked about last time. And I have, if people don't have it handy, I can hit send on an email and you can all see the revised text if you want to look at it.
You want to send it?
It's the revised text meaning, what's that in?
So I'll read it while it's on its way to your inbox. So the motion I made last time was same persons, initiating or knowingly engaging in substantive communications without prior authorization by the commission with any person who has any direct or indirect interest in any matter before the commission or any matter that may be reasonably expected to come before the commission about that matter. So that is the thing. My draft would just add, for purposes of this code of conduct, matter shall mean any complaint, review, inquiry, or investigation into alleged violations of law, any request for guidance under Executive Law 947, including requests for approval of outside activities, and any other matter that is confidential by law. So the intent is we're not going to be talking to people about things that we do in our quasi-adjudicative capacity, investigations, guidance. But we are free to talk to people about policymaking type of matters or other things that are not related to a specific thing that's pending in front of us. By thing, I mean quasi-adjudicative thing. I apologize if not.
So I could have breakfast with someone from Reinvent Albany, and as long as we weren't talking about anything within that description of matter, it would basically be okay.
They could talk to you about what they think should be on our legislative agenda. They could talk to you similarly. If you're teaching a class, you can admit that you're an ethics commissioner. We talked last time about some questions because there's no in-public session or in open meeting exception to this language, which we could add, but we haven't yet. So you could continue to have conversations with folks. My point was, as I said in the meeting, I'm not strongly of the view that we need to have those conversations. My strong view is that we need to define matter because it's very evident we don't agree on what that is. So I strongly oppose anything that doesn't have a definition of matter. I'll probably support just about any definition of matter that folks want to propose. That's fine.
Commissioner Cardozo.
There's something
I had agreed with Commissioner Dares last time. All of us, virtually all of us, know people who advocate for various things. And if you're at a cocktail party with a friend of yours who happens to be the vice chair of a lobbying organization or a public service organization or the bar association, and he or she says, hey, Michael, why doesn't the commission urge legislative passage on X, Y, or Z? Why do we have to go through any process at all? That person says, hey, you should exonerate someone. That's a totally different situation. But to limit us to really not be able to talk to any person in the public service who we've used to deal with, and I'm sure most of us have dealt with people like that on a regular basis, I think is unrealistic and unnecessary.
Commissioner Groenewegen and Commissioner Carvalho.
And I think I'm on the exact opposite side of that question in that this is where we go back to the public perception about us as members of this body that trying to know who's saying what to whom when and who's being observed saying what to whom when. I think the way to avoid that is to just not talk about the commission when you run into these people. I mean, it's not, maybe it's more awkward than I know, but I mean, you're someplace and somebody sees you and they want to ask you a question, you can say, you know what, I think it's just best that I'm not talking about the commission, or that we have a code of conduct that says we're not going to discuss that. We discuss matters in an open session. If you want to know what we're thinking about policy issues, we're going to have this round table. I mean, there are
under the current draft that was articulated last time. So under the current draft, if somebody says, what's your website? That's a matter related to the commission. The conversation we had last time was.
We could tie ourselves up in knots to say, what's your website? You know, or could you say to your students, I'm a member of the commission? I mean, your students, if they're reading your bio on the law school's website, who knows that?
There's no general knowledge exception either.
But that's doable. General knowledge is easy, but I just think if we're opening the door to particularly people who interact in a lot of different social environments where you can be seen by a lot of different people and you're there over talking about the commission, I think that can affect the integrity of all of us.
So I think so let me just comment and then Commissioner Austin.
I think that.
I want to keep going with that.
I'm sorry, okay, no, I'm sorry. That was my mistake. Yeah, and it is, it is very difficult. And this was the same comment I made last time. I'm going to give you an example. When you're in these settings where there are tons of people who are under the jurisdiction of the commission, they come up and talk to you. So I'm at a fundraiser last Monday night, and a group of lobbyists make their way to me. And I said, we're going to report this conversation. And I sent Sandy and Keith a text and said, guess what? A group of lobbyists make their way to me. Now, I told them I couldn't talk about anything substantive related to the commission. And they basically just wanted to say hello because years ago, I had actually been a client, probably about 10 years ago. But I think as long as we disclose, I like the definition of matter. As long as we disclose, it's just, people walk up to you, I can't talk to you. That's just not, I can't talk to you about the commission. It's not, to Michael's point, it's just hard. It's not practical. And I think the obligation should be on us to disclose.
Can I get in the queue?
And to stay away from anything substantive, Commissioner Carvalho. Yes, and then also.
So, yeah, the definition is helpful, but the definition that you propose, I don't think is limiting enough. But any person who has any direct or indirect interest in any matter before the commission, it's just so broad. First of all, it presumes it kind of takes anyone out. You can't talk to pretty much anyone, right? Because if you're talking about a lobbyist clients, that's the business world, right? Most big companies have a lobbying department. So it's just overly broad. Who am I left to speak to, and how do I know that these people? Nobody.
Under my definition, the fact that somebody's a registered lobbyist alone doesn't.
But let's say somebody asks for an opinion about something. I can't speak to them.
You can, as long as you can speak to them under my definition, as long as it's not a pending investigation or inquiry. So say if they ask you, for example, about the lobbying filing requirements, no, I think it'd be a big mistake to try and give them advice. None of us should do that. I think we all know that. But if somebody said, where do I find the lobbying filing requirements? And hey, is there an advisory opinion? You can say, I think we did an advisory opinion on that. You can talk, in other words, being a registered lobbyist, when I asked last time, FDS filings, right? A lot of us work with or know a lot of folks who do FDS filings or who are registered lobbyists. That alone, under my definition, doesn't make them a person with an interest in a matter because FDS filings and lobbying disclosures are not matters.
Did you say in your definition that people who are asking for advice and guidance are those?
Well, informal advice and guidance under the executive law. So right, we shouldn't be doing that anyway. If somebody says,
not that we're going to give it to them, but if they all no, right, not about that stuff. But if they come in and they've asked for advice and guidance, whether or not we know it at the time that we see them at the cocktail party is one thing, and the second thing is why should that create a conflict of interest? It doesn't mean they're talking to me about the advice and guidance that they sought. The likelihood is they're not because they're seeking it, from the commission and it's already underway. But why could I not be able to speak to that person if I see that just because they could be asking for guidance about some really minor thing that doesn't really.
My view for what it's worth, and the reason I wrote the definition this way is that I don't think we should be giving anybody
I'm not saying we should give it like outside. I agree with you. That's a substantive conversation about something you've already brought to the commission, and the commission should decide.
Right.
But that means I can't speak to that person. I'm not going to speak about the guidance they're seeking. I'm not looking to substitute my advice for the commission's advice. But just the fact that they've asked for advice means I can't speak to them out of part. Oh, I saw that you're on this.
Well, it's only substantive communications about the matter. So you're allowed to talk to them about anything except the guidance request that is pending in front of the agency.
I didn't really get that from your oral statement of it, and we don't have it here, so okay.
I'm sorry, it's in your email or
That was in the meeting, from the last meeting.
from the last meeting, yeah. So you'd still be able to chat with hobbyists.
And complain, yes.
Find out about their pending request for guidance or an investigation or an inquiry.
Would it help to qualify, but
Go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say substantive matters, is that still too vague?
It's not.
So it says about that matter.
Oh, wait.
Oh, would it help, would it? The definition you're working with essentially involves matter that you can't discuss anyway, right?
Right.
Statutorily protected information.
So your question is whether to just add the word, I mean, I still think my definition is we need a definition of matter, but
Review.
you're wondering whether to limit the communications to communications about the substance of the matter? Is that the idea?
No, to try to cap and qualify matter, your feeling is it's too vague.
Yeah.
I think matter, in the context of the commission is probably well enough understood. Could always come to staff if there's any confusion about it. But if you're concerned that any casual thing might be sucked in somehow and become prohibited as a subject of conversation, I'm suggesting maybe substantive.
But we got that in the
Well, no, because my concern is that I don't think we agree on whether somebody who comes to us and says, hey, I think you all should really endorse this proposal to change the state law to involve judicial nominations processing. And I think that's certainly very substantive. It's urging us to take a position on this.
I mean, well said. I just want to say this for the record, and I think I said it last time. It's probably best in terms of optics, and optics have conflict of interest and EOL implications because it's as much the appearance of being free of any undue influence as the substance of being free of that influence. And I'm not suggesting that anyone on this commission would ever do anything untoward. But the commission correctly, and the commissioners and staff are in a sense constantly, and we should be under scrutiny.
So what's the therefore, or the conclusion of that?
My suggestion is that the broadest possible exclusion or qualification is probably the best one for the commission to have in its code of conduct. If there are real practical reasons why that's not acceptable, then I guess we have to drill down and come up with more specific kinds of definitions. I think that's going to be very, very difficult.
So does disclose, I don't know how to say this, but does disclosure help here? The fact that we report, we understand that we won't discuss any matter that is before the commission.
I don't know what that is. That's my point. I'm not going to know what it is.
Right.
So
That's why I think disclosure helps. So
I don't know what a matter is.
well, you just disclose the conversation. Commissioner James, and then Vice Charles.
I agree with Commissioner that I think it's critically important that we define matter. And I think her definition really is one that would enable us to have other conversations. We do have lives, as you said, outside of the commission. Many of us are in practice. We meet people in civic associations, bar associations, and some of these conversations are going to occur. But if it's about a matter as it's defined in Commissioner's descriptions,
I think we should not engage in those conversations. And if there are other matters that are discussed, then we should report them. And I think reporting does help. But there are certain areas which we should not discuss, and I think those include the complaint review, inquiry, investigation into alleged violations of the law, or any request for guidance on the executive law.
We're already bound by that, but we're already bound not to speak about confidential matters. We undertook confidentiality.
So then what's the downside of restating it in our code of conduct?
And this doesn't just cover the stuff that is confidential. This covers, it's overly broad, and the proposed definition, it includes things that, of course, we're not talking, it's just overly broad with any person with any direct or indirect interest in any matter. It's really
But
broad.
the matter is defined later on. Are you looking at the?
I'm looking at it, but I said, like, even asking for for guidance, I can't speak to, I'm not gonna speak about the guidance matter, but I just don't think it's close enough, but,
Well, this is aspirational. I mean, it's not like it's law. Not like we're gonna take it to.
If you violate it, we can take action under 94. Can I make a suggestion? So here's my sense of where we are is that some of us want to very broadly prohibit lots of conversations. Some of us want a more narrow prohibition, and it may be that some of us want to add nothing in place of it. My suggestion would be the only two drafts we have are written from staff and the amended version of that text that I sent around. I would suggest that we can always add to the code of conduct later. So, by adopting a code of conduct that doesn't address this, or that addresses it in the minimal way that I've suggested, we're not foreclosing that action. So I would suggest, and I'm actually going to not make a motion myself on purpose, because right now there is no paragraph 6, because we voted to remove it last time, so the status quo is blank. If anybody wants to make a motion, either to adopt either of the two texts that we have proposed, great. Otherwise, I would suggest that those who have strong feelings about what the prohibition should return, hopefully discuss with the folks who they know disagree about this, and come back with a proposed amendment to the code of conduct. But I don't think this should continue to hold up the adoption of all of the other very important provisions.
Let's try one more time on yours.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone who'd be willing to make the motion on Commissioner Ayers' proposal, and I'll read it.
I'll make the motion because it may help folks identify.
Can I ask you a question before you do?
Sure.
Is that as part of what is in the red copy?
It includes, I believe, all of the text that's in the red copy, and then just add the definition. I think that's right, although I haven't.
The motion on the floor, is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Cardoza. More questions?
Commissioner Cardoza seconded it?
Yes.
for the sake of simplicity, just somebody
Just add that sentence.
print it out. I mean, my sense is if I had a printer, I could,
We're all reading it, right?
I don't know what.
One from Commissioner Ayers, right?
The folks who are on email right now, if you're on your email, I just sent it. If
Yeah,
no, I can.
It's in your email. I think it's a good idea to table it and move on to the rest of it. We have a agenda.
So is there a motion to table?
There's a motion.
There's a motion pending.
Motion to table supersedes a motion on the floor. So are you
I'm making the motion to table it, yes.
until
Until we can all
agree?
review this and review the language and come to an understanding of what is prohibited. It's prohibited.
Okay, Commissioner was seconded. So there's no debate on a motion to table. All those in favor of tabling this, say aye. Opposed?
I guess I'm opposed. I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time with the motion table, but I'm
Yeah,
opposed.
you just want, you just can't. Yeah. All right,
So let me just get the votes.
All those in favor of tabling, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. And those opposed, it's going to be 5. So 5, 4, we are not tabling. All right. So now there's a motion on the floor.
Can we, would you mind identifying identifying either of the, short of a roll call vote, can we have some identification of either who voted in the affirmative or who voted in the negative?
Sure, the 5 opposing tabling were Ayers, Austin, Dave,
Opposed, right?
Ayers, Austin, Davy, Carvalho. Those, and,
But still,
He's listening. So,
all right, that's different, I apologize. Okay, there's a motion on the floor to accept Commissioner Ayers' proposal here. All those in favor of that motion?
You have,
from the point of order, if I may, just so we're clear exactly what it is. Is the motion on the floor to take the language that's in paragraph 6 and go with it?
No. Here's the motion. The motion is initiating and knowingly engaging in substantive communications without prior authorization by the commission with any person who has any direct or indirect interest in any matter before the commission, or any matter that may reasonably be expected to come before the commission about that matter, with respect to any discussions with such persons concerning other matters. Such discussions shall be disclosed to the commission, executive director, and general counsel.
Yeah, I have.
Purposes of this code of conduct, matter shall mean any complaint, review, inquiry, or investigation into alleged violations of law, any request for guidance under Executive Law 97, subsection 94, subsection 7, including requests for approval of outside activities and any other matter that is confidential by law. That's the motion. It has been made and seconded. Shall we vote? All those in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes.
Can we have the names of those who voted in the opposition?
Commissioner Carvalho and Commissioner Whittingham. Commissioner Vice Chair Austin.
Two.
All right. Then we get through the second, we'll break for lunch. But let's go some
Incentive.
yes.
Okay, we are now on page 3, which I was on before incorrectly. And that is in the section dealing with preventing conflicts of interest, recusal, subparagraph F has been, Keith, am I correct? This has been added, or this has just been there that we didn't deal with it the last time?
There was some discontent with the originally proposed language, so this language in front of you today tries to soften the original proposal and also expand it in terms of adding some clarity to the process.
It should be or. Instead of, right, it should be or. When I started reading it last time, I pointed that out. In the very first line, it should be from the executive director or general counsel.
Gotcha. Yep.
A follow-up question to clarify. Am I right in remembering that last time the concern was because the previous draft gave the executive director the power to force somebody's recusal before it was presented to the full commission, and this current draft removes that text so that if a member refuses to recuse over the exact objections of staff, it just goes to the commission, but the member is not recused in the interim. Am I right in understanding that?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, with regards.
But I should point out that staff will still not be providing potentially conflicted information to that commissioner.
Until the commission's had an opportunity to rule on it.
Sorry, say it again.
So
That's the new paragraph 3. They just won't share
paragraph 3. If the staff has deemed the commissioner conflicted then that commissioner won't receive any information on that item until the commission has had a chance to act on
The recusal. So you can't force us to recuse, but we can't force you to cough up information. It's conflict of rights. Actually, it's like a fair. Well,
But yeah, there's,
no, recusing is when you abstain from voting about something.
but but also the paragraph 3 also points out that, so staff, yes, will not be giving information to the commissioner that they feel is recused, should be recused from this or conflicted unless and otherwise directed by the full commission. So.
And so imagine, would I be right in imagining that what would happen in this situation is, let's say staff feels somebody should recuse, they refuse to, staff says, okay, well, we're not going to give you the background materials for now. Then it comes before the full commission. And if the full commission disagrees with staff and says, we don't think there should be a recusal, that commissioner could then say, could y'all give me a minute to review this material that I haven't been able to review because I have a duty to vote, right? That's.
Yeah, we wouldn't anticipate a separate procedure for
someone
Like a good.
someone make a motion so we can get on
Make a motion that we adopt this new red text.
I see.
Okay, Commissioner
I just had a question, and maybe I missed it. I don't think at the moment that the fact of the recusal is a matter of public record. Well, if I missed that, I wonder why we don't say in the regs that if a commissioner refuses himself or herself, that should be noted.
Do we, when a commissioner abstains because of a recusal on a vote, do we record the reason that the commissioner?
I didn't say reason. I think there someplace else did. But the fact of the recusal.
So that the minutes, if I may, so that the minutes would read Commissioner X has left the meeting because of a recusal.
So,
period.
I caution us from confusing or conflating recusal and abstentions. If one is recused, they don't abstain from the vote. They simply don't participate in the vote, and the minutes would reflect that. An abstention really should only be reserved. Pardon?
Go ahead.
An abstention should be reserved for use only when a member, for whatever reason, doesn't feel informed enough, for example, to cast a vote. But if a member is recused from consideration of the matter, then that is noted in the record, and that person does not participate.
That satisfies the issue. Right, okay. Are we ready to vote on this? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then abstain. I didn't have enough time with this. I just, yeah.
So Commissioner Whittingham and Commissioner opposes and Commissioner Carvalho abstains. All right. Vice Chair Office.
Okay, let's keep going. Stay at the same place. I've suggested or am suggesting, forgive me, I only really got to work on the material last evening. You received a commissioner's memorandum of recusal forms with the material. I'm going to suggest that we adopt language that deals with that. Here. I would suggest we add a subparagraph H. And if you like, I'll ask Martha to type it up for us during the break. If you can read my writing, she can. I'll stand with her and help her. It would read as follows.
Is there a tab we're looking at?
No.
It would come on page 3 of the document we're working with, solid.
I'm sorry, this.
Yeah, under page 3, it would be.
Or 2. Okay. It would read as follows. Within 30 days of joining the commission, each commissioner shall file with the general counsel a recusal list.
This is the first time we're.
This is the first time we're here. Oh, I see.
The recusal list shall identify each organization, entity, and/or individual with which the commissioner reasonably believes a conflict exists. Sub 2, current members of the commission shall file a recusal list not later than January 31, 2024. 3, each commissioner shall have a continuing obligation to supplement and update their recusal list when they become aware of circumstances which warrant disclosure. 4, each January 30, the language we can fit. Every January 31st, each commissioner shall review their recusal list and update it. And then the recusal list, I've kind of worked the wording around to be consistent with what I just read to you. That's the general idea. But this way, the purpose of it is so that the staff doesn't have to send out material and say, whoops, we got this one. I have to recuse on that, and sometimes that will still happen. But for example, Commissioner Cardozo had a particular individual for whom he had to recuse and had to mention again, if it's on the list that he submitted, staff knows, take that off of his, out of his book. It would make it a lot easier for staff to know who's on, who's off, and the like.
Wait, so, and then the categories are, obviously, I would think, it's obvious. I think this is tough, but those entities and individuals over whom the commission has jurisdiction.
Right.
And we're trying to anticipate.
Right.
That could be quite a list for some of us.
I mean, as an example, I would add to the list.
Right.
I saw that we have a matter with a particular organization, a lobbyist, and I happen to be friendly with the president of that organization. So I would automatically put them on the list regardless.
But you're asking us, and I'm not opposing it, but I just want to make sure that we're all clear. You're asking us to anticipate individuals and organizations where we might have to recuse ourselves because we have jurisdiction over them on this commission.
That's one way of putting it. Okay. So that's the general idea. I'll type it up and circulate it. But I just wanted to let you know that that's something I worked on. With regard to the form, I changed the language in the beginning. I don't think we need to, on the recusal form, identify the reason for our recusal. I'm not sure what describe any other facts and circumstances.
Rest now on the code of conduct on that recusal form. Let's stay with the code of conduct.
Okay, that's fine.
Then we get through this.
Okay. So let's skip over that one and move forward with
You don't want any comment on
when we get it,
wait.
when we bring it back to consider it. But
I just wanted to let you know that that's something that's good. Okay, we are up to page 5. Now it's Roman numeral 5. And that's post-commission policies, and that's something that we put over from the last meeting and asked staff to draft, I believe.
Can I just ask a minor clarification question? The bracketed citations, are those part of the proposed codes of conduct or just a note to us as commissioners that signals to us where those things come from?
I would think that since we have a section dealing with statutory references, it would not be in there in the final draft.
it's there for information.
Since it's new.
There a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Cardozo and Austin. Any more discussion on this? Ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So the opposition is Swinningham, Edwards, and Carvine. You just raise your hand. You raise your hand, yeah.
Must be less.
It's lunchtime. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so the opposition is Carvalho, Commissioners Carvalho and Whittingham. All right, want to continue?
That's it.
All right. Yes.
Okay, make the suggestion.
And we'll come back on the recusal piece, but right now, this serves.
Well, do we need to vote to adopt the whole thing? I wasn't clear on this.
Well, that was what I was going to say. I was going to say that I'd be willing to hold off on the recusal item and just bring it as an amendment later.
Yes.
And we vote on this document as we have now reviewed it and as a whole, as revised, and then any other amendments as life goes on, we'll still address it.
Can I ask, are you revising the form that we provided? As
Well, no, we're not.
part of the,
I think we're just voting on this for now.
With regards to the numbering,
no, the memorandum of refusal.
Yeah.
Modifying the form?
I would modify it.
That's some future day.
Yes.
That's some future day. Right now, we're simply adopting code of conduct in its entirety as amended. Commissioner Jenkins.
I mean, we're gonna do this after lunch, so why don't we just decide whether we're gonna adopt that additional section? And then vote on the whole thing, rather than vote on the whole thing and then talk about it in a minute.
But because I think.
What I'll do is I'll type it up and circulate it.
We'll review it and then we'll.
So let's get a motion.
Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
go ahead. Is this gonna have an effective date?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Let's move it and offer a date.
I move that it be effective as of the date it's adopted.
Second.
Discussion, Commissioner Whittingham.
I would ask that it be amended until January 1st of 2024.
I accept that as a friendly.
Okay. So effective date would be January 2024, where we would be, January 1, 2024, where we would be under the guidance of this code of conduct.
Yes.
Is there?
So you're accepting it as a friendly amendment. So we have a motion on the floor.
Is there an amendment?
She accepted it. So all right.
So my concern is, without drawing any negative implications, that people would say, well, that means if in December or November, December, a commissioner could do all these prohibited things. I'm not saying that's, I'm not saying that's.
Is there?
Motivation.
So I think, so there's a, that's the motion.
So I'll put it on the record. I am asking, I have specifically informed and spoken ex parte with my appointed authority that I am not seeking to have to be nominated for an extended term. My term ends in December. I'm simply asking as a courtesy if it can extend till January. That's it.
I wasn't suggesting any implication. I'm just saying, could someone opposed to us draw a negative conclusion?
Right. I would propose that we go with it as stated by, and with the friendly amendment accepted, with the understanding, it's the sense of the commission, that even though this goes into effect, January 1, we will comport ourselves under its guidance.
But it wouldn't be retroactive.
It would not be retroactive.
So in me leaving the commission in December, yes, comport yourself to the extent, but it's not, it wouldn't be something applicable to me or applicable to Commissioner Carter. Thank you.
I actually think it's important to delay the effective date a little bit because we're imposing new obligations on ourselves. And I hope that all of us will review our current relationships and practices to make sure that we understand these obligations and that we're able to fully come into compliance.
I withdraw my comment.
Thank you. Okay, great. And I thought it was useful to have that on the record. That's why I strongly
We
support
have a motion on the floor to adopt effective.
I'm sorry, so I have a question. So I think maybe I don't know if there should be two motions. So if you're voting to extend the timeframe, are you voting to adopt the whole thing?
Yes.
Because I'm not, I don't, you still have I'm not voting on the whole thing. I mean, I'm not in agreement with the whole thing. So, to the extent I am not in agreement with the whole thing, I do agree though that it should be stayed till January 1st.
One on effective date and one on
I don't
adoption.
want to do that. All right.
It was originally stated,
That's not what we have.
originally stated as one vote. The vote that Commissioner Broden gave me was. So it was adopted. She accepted the friendly amendment from Commissioner Whittingham that.
Withdraw the amendment, Commissioner Whittingham.
No,
then-
it was just the effective date.
But
just for
wait. Withdraw the amendment, then we'll take your motion. Effective.
Okay, so.
Because
Okay.
that would satisfy. So we get one motion to approve, and then we'll have another motion to do the effective.
No, her withdrawing her amendment doesn't do that because Nancy's motion was to adopt with an effective
Right,
date.
no. My motion was limited. The question was, is this code going to have an effective date? And the chair said to me, yes, you want to propose an amendment? And I said, yes, I propose the effective date be the date of it.
Let's do this. Hold on, just withdraw the entire motion and then remake it.
Okay.
So motion's off the table,
Okay.
officially withdrawn.
Okay.
Make
I move that the code of conduct include an effective date.
Moving that we approve.
That we approve an effective date.
Approving
Code of conduct. I never moved for the whole. Right. There was that little question of,
Okay.
we didn't have a code of effective date.
Okay, so just take all motions off the table. With agree, Commissioner Cardozo, would you move?
I move to adopt the code of conduct that we've been discussing effective January 1, 2024.
Sorry, what is?
Separate vote on the date.
I think we should do the date. And then you call the contact.
This is very simple. Can just hold it. Is there a motion to accept the code of conduct?
No, because we would like probably suggestion to vote on the date.
We'll do that. You want to vote on, we don't have a, so if we get a code of conduct, then let's have a code of conduct and then we can decide when it goes into effect.
Usually it's part of the code that it has the effective
You put a date in first. So you just add a sentence, effective X, Y, Z, and that becomes a part of it.
Yeah.
Well, and I just think that we should be able to vote to accept the code of conduct as we voted. So I didn't vote for all the, I mean, at least, I didn't vote for everything.
You want to be able to vote against the code of conduct?
No, but I want to be able to vote against those provisions I already voted against. And
That's not possible.
well, then I will vote.
If you look at the next document we're going to be talking about, the proposed meeting guidelines, the last paragraph says, has a section, effective date. It says the meeting guidelines become effective on whatever it says.
Those are changes, I say.
So that's what.
So what I'm suggesting simply is we're going to adopt the whole document, including the last paragraph, which will say the effective date is January 1.
But what Commissioner Carvalho is saying, if I can try this, right?
You'll vote no.
But so she wants to be able to vote affirmatively on the effective date,
Yes,
but against the.
I want to vote against the whole code of conduct. The most part I don't agree with already. Okay, so then that's right, that's what I want to be.
Okay.
Correct.
So that's two votes. One is to approve the code of conduct and another is to approve the effective date.
That's what it is.
Why is that? It's not an issue.
Okay.
Okay, so you want to approve the date for the code of conduct before we have.
Yes, normally in statutes, the date is part of it.
That's our Commissioner motion.
I'll make the motion. The motion is to add a sentence to the end of the code of conduct that says the effective date will be January 1st, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, no. Okay. Motion to approve the code of conduct. Commissioner Hurd.
So
Second, Commissioner James. All those in favor of approving the code of conduct, please say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. It passes 2 noes.
What do you?
it was
Is it no? Is that subject to the understanding that you're not coming back with some?
The vote is.
On this iteration?
Yes.
Oh, okay, then I'm in favor of that.
Okay, so the vote is 7-2 in favor. Commissioners Carvalho and Whittingham voting against. All right.
You take a vote.
All right, Emily?
We adjourned.
Yes, so are we ready to,
Go ahead, Emily.
and just a point of clarification, are we doing lunch and executive session now, or are we gonna come back to public session after lunch and then?
Come back to public session and do proposed meeting guidelines.
That's actually,
Okay,
questions.
all right, Gina, are you ready to count us down?
Hold on 1 second, Emily. Hold on, So it's been suggested that I can't believe it, that we don't have any comments on the. We can cut nothing. If we don't, we can vote. If we do, I'm saying let's go to lunch. Let's go to lunch. All right, go ahead, Emily. Yeah, Jeannie.
Okay, we're going to lunch. All right, Jean, can you do the countdown for us, please?
Stand by for clear in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're alive.
Thank you. We are back in the public session of our October 25th meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. The next item on our agenda are our meeting guidelines, and who's taking us through those? All right. All right. Let me ask first, are there any, is there a motion to approve? Let's just get it on the table and then we'll do the discussion.
So moved.
Commissioner Cardozo, seconded by Vice Chair Austin. All right, conversation. Yes, Commissioner Harris.
Just to make sure, so the version that we should be looking at is what was the one with printed out?
The one that was out on the table, an email yesterday evening.
Two, one, I just want to sort of renew my standing request that everything we get have a date on it of some kind to avoid draft confusion. And then my subsequent question is, well, it's really a formal question anyway. Guidelines, in terms of keeping the governing documents accessible and comprehensible, where does this, we have resolutions and I know where to find them. We have regulations and I know where to find them. Where do guidelines go once they're adopted? And would it be better to make this a resolution so that it falls in with other sort of like governing documents?
It should be on the website along with the Commissioner Code of Conduct.
Okay.
Under commissioners, I haven't looked at it lately, but that's where it typically will reside.
Is there, and so like if a member of the
It's on the website.
It's on the website. If a member of the public is thinking like, I just want to learn about how this commission does its stuff. There's a section on our website called laws that include, that's roughly by topic, but also has advisory opinions, regs and guidance and resolutions. Is there a place that they can go to find like other guidance type documents that govern our work?
There are endless reports and the like on the website.
Things that govern that are like, those aren't rules that we have to follow. Those are reports about what we do.
Do you mean? No, I don't necessarily. No, there are documents that the Congress Commission, the governing law procedures that we follow generally. There are all sorts of discussions and guides. The website has a huge amount of information.
And we do have a section, if I could just weigh in, we do have a section under jurisdiction and authority that has all the relevant laws posted there that are under our purview, the previous iterations as well as the current iterations since ECHR was passed and the changes that were made there. So I think once the code of conduct and once the the meeting guidelines are finalized, we'll be looking at a place in this area to put it on. There is not, for instance, a specific thing right now that says code of conduct or meeting guidelines because they hadn't been approved yet. But we'll find an appropriate place under the about section that talks about our jurisdiction authority, the commissioners, commission meetings. We probably would put the meeting guidelines under commission meetings somewhere on that page, and we'll find the appropriate place for the code of conduct.
This may illustrate what I thought the jurisdiction authority was the regs that other people have to follow, that we tell them whether they've been following right. The section about what we do is your laws, where it says things like commission resolutions, and I actually wouldn't have thought jurisdiction authority is where to kind of find this.
I think it's just the opposite. I mean, it's in both places in a sense. So the jurisdiction and authority tab is generally, where do we wholly get our jurisdiction? What is our jurisdiction? Where do we get our authority from? So that is more of a general statement, the about, if you will. And then the laws, I don't have the website in front of me, but my recollection is that all of the laws, including our governing laws, are in the laws tab as well. So that's more of a statutory way, right? So the jurisdiction and authority, and I'm sure Emily is much more well versed in our website than I am. The jurisdiction and authority is more of just a general statement about, where does our jurisdiction come from? Where does our authority come from? What do we look at? The general, the commission.
The jurisdiction authority tab just has full of subsections that are each a paragraph long: advice and guidance, financial disclosure, lobbying, reporting, and training and education.
Apologies, I misspoke, Commissioner. It's on the About page. So the About page links about the commission on ethics and lobbying, and it says who we are, our core functions. There's a link to our jurisdiction and authority, which is the page you just cited, and then learn more. And I think it could be appropriate on this page to put a code of conduct. Right now, the old code of conduct sits at the end of the bios, which I think is a little bit hard to find. So we're actually going through the process right now of going page by, like, big tab by big tab, and updating it and making the it more user-friendly. We're looking at what pages are visited most and making sure those links are more prominent on the website. So through that process, we will make sure that you're able to find the code of conduct and the meeting guidelines in the right place. But right now, things are a bit in flux because we are working on improving the website.
So that's great. And I didn't really mean to make this a comment about the website at all. What prompted it was just thinking that we already have a bunch of things called resolutions that govern the way we do our work and the way what procedures we follow as a commission. I was wondering, my concern was just creating another kind of document called guidelines, which basically, as I understand it, functions similarly to what the resolutions do, that it governs our conduct. I'm just wondering if this should be resolution 23-04 or whatever, meeting guidelines, instead of just being meeting guidelines, so that somebody who's need to understand how we work has a more limited set of for whatever it's worth. I'm just looking for ways to reduce the number of stuff that we put out. It's just
maybe we should go to commission meetings.
I think in the past, the meeting guidelines have been under commission meetings.
We could put them in multiple commissions.
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff should have that.
Right, yes, we would put them under the commission's meetings tab for sure.
No, my question is really what makes this different from resolutions that we passed? Should it just be one?
We should go away.
I'd like to make a motion to table the discussion of this policy. And the reason for that motion is that I had started to revise this document. One of the concerns I have for this is that it looks very similar to the meeting guidelines that were adopted by the prior commission. But the most fundamental change regarding these guidelines has occurred by operation of law, and that we are now subject to the open meetings law. And while we acknowledge that, it seems to me we've still got holdovers from things like when we talk about what we will hold in public session, rather than listing things that look like the things that would be discussed in the past. It seems to me as a matter of law, everything is presumptively an open session. And that's what we should be making clear, that the real exclusion is what is in an executive session. And since that's a fundamental shift, I think this draft can cause more confusion rather than enhance clarity. And it seems to me, if this is our meeting guidelines, to the extent we want to go above and beyond what's in the open meetings law that speaks to how our meetings are held, it seems to me there are a lot of things that can be included. Like I'm looking at my draft that my first step, after an introduction, it started with a section called Open Meetings Law Compliance, which stated our commitment. It defined, the meeting. It defined a quorum specifically for us, not just a general. It defined executive session in the beginning. Then I had a section on timing, notice, and location, all that kind of stuff. But then I had a thing on meeting agenda and materials, talking about how that would be created, and the timing of submitting them to one another. Again, as somewhat aspirational, but at least stating what our expectation was, talking about some of Mr. Ayer's comments about things we would expect in meeting materials, such as stating, the author of materials, the date they're prepared.
So since we're going to discuss it at another meeting.
Well, what I'd ask is, since I'm asking to table it, and since I have this draft that I just hadn't shared yet,
Right.
I would be happy to ensure that at the November meeting.
Or December, we'll see.
But no, I would commit now to have it ready for the November.
For the
meeting.
next meeting.
Yes, okay. And one other thing I was thinking of including, I don't bother with it because it's kind of the heart, is including a section on meeting etiquette.
Meeting.
Etiquette.
That's for
Maybe that thing is try.
What's that?
No camels on our ties. It's.
So that's my basis for my request to table it.
So the motion to table, is there a second? All those in favor of tabling until the next meeting with the understanding that Commissioner Groenewegen is going to circulate a draft well in advance, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I found it is carried.
Thank you.
All right, so there are two things, maybe just one thing right now. Speaking of meetings, we have a meeting November 29th. And then it was supposedly a tentative for December 20. I would propose that we combine those two and meet on December 13th. So there'd be no meeting in November, and we would do our meeting on December 13th.
That would be in Albany.
That was scheduled to be in Albany, yeah. We can't do the 13th. You can't either. How about the 7th? The 6th, rather. That's the Wednesday, I think.
You all have meetings well in advance. The sooner we can get a proposed schedule out for next year.
2024.
Unfortunately, we had an illness. I'm going to circulate a proposed schedule, and then we can pass on it at the November/December meeting.
It looks like we're staying with November.
I would suggest, if possible, we get it done before the 7th.
Of what?
Yeah, that would be great.
Because if we don't do it until December 7th, people who made meetings, other engagements in January.
Circulate by the end of the week.
Let's be clear about what we're talking about. We're going to stay with November 29. We're staying with November 29. And then we'll decide then if we're going to do a December meeting. Okay,
Right now, we have tentatively scheduled for the 20th or not?
for December 20th, yes. Which seems a little late.
That's before.
for people.
Yeah. I can tell you I can't make that. Yeah.
Okay, we'll figure it out on the 29th, sort of whether we need a December meeting. All right. So with that, and had I known that we were going to table the guidelines, but with that, we'll entertain a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Public Officer Law, Section 105 and Executive Law 94, subsection 7, to address matters concerning employment of personnel, pending litigation, and investigative and enforcement matters that are confidential pursuant to Section 94 of the Executive. Is there such a motion? So, Vice Chair Austin, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Edwards, all those in favor of adjourning to executive session, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We will enter into executive session, Emily, when you give us a
Yep,
signal.
we're ready to go, and Jean's gonna close.
You are live.
If you were back in the public session of this, the October 25th meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government, we're going to have a report out from the executive session by our executive director, Mr. Sanford Berlin.
Thank you, Chair Davey. In executive session, the commission discussed matters related to litigation and legal advice. The commission considered several guidance requests pursuant to Executive Law, Section 94(7). The commission discussed several investigative matters and closed 31 matters.
All right. Any other discussion, conversation, issues come before this body? Hearing none, there's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned.